Billionaire missed his helicopter flight after a lost little girl looked up at him and whispered one word that changed everything. Daddy. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, subscribe to the channel and let's get started. The helipad roared under the spinning blades of an awaiting helicopter. Security guards in crisp black suits blocked the path to the landing pad, their faces impassive as they shielded the most powerful man in the entire city, Alexander Pierce, CEO of the massive Pierce Global Holdings. At just 40, he was the epitome of success. Tailored suit, silver cufflinks, shoes polished so perfectly they reflected the swirling rotor lights. Everyone knew this flight was critical. Once aboard, Alexander would seal a business merger worth millions, if not billions, and expand his empire across continents. A sleek limousine pulled up to the private entrance. The driver, tense with the awareness of his boss's impatience, jumped out immediately to open the passenger door. From inside, Alexander emerged with swift, confident steps. He checked his designer watch. Everything seemed timed down to the minute. After all, when you ruled an empire, punctuality was power. "Sir, the pilot is waiting," said Mara, his calm and capable personal assistant, clutching a leather portfolio. Her voice trembled ever so slightly, betraying the tension of the moment. She had worked for him for years, and yet Alexander's imposing presence never ceased to intimidate. This moment was a logistical ballet. The car had pulled up just as the helicopter's engines reached perfect throttle. In another 60 seconds, Alexander would be airborne, heading to a VIP board meeting. No time to waste. Alexander's face was stone cold with focus. Every detail in his daily schedule was orchestrated for maximum efficiency. He had no intention of letting anything slow him down. Not even the stinging gale from the helicopter's blades could distract him as he strode toward the open door of the aircraft. He was unstoppable, or so it seemed, until a small tug at his jacket brought him to a jarring halt. He froze, startled, as a tiny voice, frail yet urgent, cut through the roaring wind. "Daddy?" Alexander turned sharply. He saw a little girl with large, tear-filled eyes and disheveled hair. She wore a faded pink sweater, too small to ward off the biting chill on the rooftop. She couldn't have been more than 5 or 6 years old. Her small hand still gripped the edge of his expensive jacket, and she looked up at him with a mixture of sadness and hope. The guards reacted instantly, stepping forward to remove the girl, but Alexander raised his hand, stopping them. Despite the noise, something in the child's trembling voice reached him in a way that no business deal or staff member ever had. It was as if her words vibrated in the air, demanding his attention on some primal level he couldn't understand. "I'm sorry, Mr. Pierce," Mara said, rushing to move the child away gently. "We have no idea how she got up here. She must have slipped past security." But the girl clung even tighter to the corner of Alexander's jacket. "Please don't leave," the girl pleaded. I'm lost." Alexander's heart thumped once, hard. He'd once heard that children in distress could stir an instinct in people they never knew they had. But instinct or not, confusion flickered across his face. He studied the small, tear-streaked face, searching his own memory for any explanation. Was she the daughter of an employee? A stowaway from a charity event his foundation supported? And yet within seconds, something intangible held him rooted to the spot. This child, the way she said "Daddy," the way her voice cracked, felt alarmingly personal. "Sir, we need to board," yelled the pilot from the helicopter's doorway. "Air control clearance window closes in 30 seconds. Everything was urgent. Alexander had never missed a flight in his professional career. Delays were for amateurs. Yet here, in this precarious moment, a child was calling him Daddy, and he found himself torn between the unstoppable momentum of his entire corporate machine and the earnest eyes of a lost little girl. The helicopter's blades whipped the air, intensifying the deafening roar. Alexander blinked, trying to snap back into focus. He was the unstoppable Alexander Pierce. He had no time for disruptions. Yet as he prepared to signal Mara to handle this, the girl's trembling lips parted again. "I can't find my mommy," she whimpered. "Daddy, please help me." Security approached, but Alexander found himself hesitating. Every logical fiber screamed to pass her over to the authorities or child services. Still, the look in her eyes reminded him of what exactly? A half-forgotten memory? A shape from another life? He wasn't sure, but it was disquieting. He glanced over his shoulder at the helicopter that represented billions in future revenue. Then he gazed back at the frightened little girl. A single second stretched into an eternity. "Sir?" Mara touched his arm gently. "The pilot says this is the last call. If we don't leave now, you'll miss the board meeting. The entire merger could be compromised." He inhaled, attempting to quell the gnawing sense of guilt. It was ludicrous. He had always prided himself on being level-headed. Why would the plight of an unknown child make him hesitate? He forced his gaze away from the girl to address Mara, intending to order her to take the child to safety. But that command never made it past his lips, because something else in the child's face caught him, a fleeting shadow of familiarity. His jaw tightened. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but firm. "Delay the flight." Both Mara and the security guards exchanged shocked glances. This was a move no one could have predicted. Alexander Pierce never rearranged his schedule, ever. Yet he was doing so now, and for reasons that defied all business logic. The pilot, overhearing, hopped down onto the helipad in disbelief. "Delay? Sir, we won't get another flight window for hours," he tried to argue. "We risk losing the entire deal." Alexander's authoritative stare cut him off. "Delay the flight," he repeated, in a tone that brooked no argument. The pilot stepped back, resigned. As the helicopter's engine powered down, Alexander knelt, leveling his eye line with the child. The roaring wind began to subside, replaced by the quiet hum of city traffic below. An eerie calm settled over the rooftop. "What's your name?" he asked, controlling his voice to sound gentle, though beneath that calm exterior his mind raced. The girl sniffled. "Lily." Alexander nodded, battling a swirl of questions. "Lily, why did you call me Daddy? Where is your mother? How did you get here?" Each query pressed out in carefully measured tones, but inside he felt growing unease. A part of him hoped it was all a misunderstanding, that perhaps she simply mistook him for someone else. But as he watched her trembling figure, he couldn't ignore the faint, inexorable pull that her word Daddy had sparked inside him. "She said you could help," Lily whispered, her small voice carrying a weight far beyond her years. "Mommy told me if anything ever happened to her, I should find Daddy." Despite the chill in the air, Alexander felt a warm, suffocating wave of emotion. The vantage point from this rooftop was grand, offering sweeping views of the entire metropolis. Skyscrapers, highways, all part of an empire he commanded. Yet at this moment his entire world seemed to hang on the uncertain eyes of a child who claimed he was her father. He felt Mara step closer, adjusting her coat around Lily's shoulders. "We should take her inside," Mara whispered. "Try to call the authorities or see if she can remember more details about her mother." Alexander nodded, his mind still in a haze. He signaled for the guards to lead the way. As they moved toward the rooftop exit, Lily slipped her small hand into Alexander's. The simple gesture felt like a jolt of electricity. That tiny hand in his, why did it make his heart hammer like this? Suddenly, the rational part of his brain kicked into gear. If Lily truly was his daughter, or even if there was the slightest possibility, this wasn't just a random interruption. His entire carefully curated life could unravel. The scandal alone, imagine the headlines, "Billionaire's secret child." Everything he had built teetered on the brink of chaos. And yet, as Lily kept pace beside him, her smaller steps pattering across the cold concrete, Alexander felt, for perhaps the first time, that no merger or deal could compare to the significance of this moment. Something deeper was at stake here, something more human than any balance sheet or boardroom strategy. While the security team cleared the way down the tight steel stairs, Alexander tried to quell the torrent of questions flooding his thoughts. Could there be any truth to the notion that he had a child he'd never known? He had past relationships, yes, but to his knowledge, none had ever led to fatherhood. Or could this child's mother have hidden the pregnancy for reasons unknown? The swirl of possibilities tightened his chest in a fear he barely recognized. They reached the rooftop exit door, and Lily clung to him with renewed urgency. She tugged at his sleeve again, forcing him to kneel. She opened her mouth to speak, but instead burst into tears. Her sobs echoed in the enclosed stairwell, raw and full of confusion. Alexander felt a twinge in his chest, something akin to heartbreak. Trying to comfort her was an alien task to him. Compassion was not typically in his repertoire. He was known for his cold, analytic approach. Even so, he found himself gently wiping away Lily's tears with the corner of his silk handkerchief. "It's going to be all right," he heard himself saying, though he wasn't sure if it was for her benefit or his own. "I promise we'll figure this out." Behind them, the helicopter was silent, the blades stilled. A deal worth billions had slipped away that evening along with the flight window. But as Alexander stood there, holding this trembling child's hand, a new urgency eclipsed every corporate ambition. He needed to find out the truth. Moments later, the pilot and guards peeked through the exit door, uncertain and waiting for instructions. Alexander briefly caught the pilot's eye and saw frustration overshadowed by confusion, but no one dared question him again, not when he wore that resolute expression. Mara placed a hand on Alexander's shoulder, speaking softly so Lily couldn't hear. "Sir, what if this is some sort of deception? People know how to manipulate headlines." Alexander's stare was distant, yet unyielding. "Let's go downstairs. We'll call the police, check missing persons reports, whatever is necessary, but for now, take Lily to the lounge and get her something warm to drink." His tone signaled an end to the discussion. As Lily clutched his hand, Alexander led her downward, his gaze lingering on her tear-stained face. Every step stirred a swirl of emotions he didn't fully comprehend. Inside, one question thundered: who is Lily's mother? And how could such an important part of his life, if Lily was truly his daughter, remain hidden for so long? His own heartbeat hammered with tension as they descended into the building. A hidden truth had crossed his path, possibly threatening every carefully guarded aspect of his existence. Yet, despite that threat, Alexander found that letting go of Lily's hand felt harder than facing any boardroom of cutthroat investors. In that dimly lit stairwell, fatherhood was no longer a vague concept or something that happened to other men. It glimmered in front of him in the form of a little girl who believed, beyond a shadow of doubt, that he was Daddy. And in that fleeting moment, he discovered a truth that both terrified and intrigued him, that perhaps in the face of genuine human connection, the unstoppable mogul might finally have found the one thing he could not control. The executive lounge on the top floor of Pierce Global Holdings was a picture of refined luxury. Plush leather chairs surrounded a long glass table framed by walls of floor-to-ceiling windows that offered panoramic city views. Ordinarily, the hush of this space was disturbed only by the discreet hum of servers laying out imported coffee or exotic teas for VIPs. But tonight, the tension inside was palpable. Mara swept in, guiding Lily by the hand, while Alexander followed in measured strides. He had never expected his day to twist into such a puzzle. From a meticulously planned schedule, helicopter flight at 6 p.m. sharp, culminating in a life-changing merger, he'd gone to dealing with a frightened girl who called him Daddy. His mind buzzed with half-formed questions. Who is her mother? How did she make it to the rooftop? Over and over, the same confusion. It felt surreal for Alexander to even ask such things about himself. Alexander Pierce, who prided himself on controlling everything. He watched as Mara gently eased Lily onto a padded chair. The little girl looked overwhelmed, her eyes darting between the glimmering city lights outside and the formidable figure of Alexander. A staff member hurried in with hot chocolate, setting the steaming cup in front of Lily with a kind smile. "Thank you," Lily whispered, her tiny fingers gripping the cup for warmth. Then, after a moment's hesitation, she breathed a barely audible "thank you" again, looking up at Alexander this time. He stood by the window, arms folded, his silhouette outlined by the city lights. "We'll get some answers," he said, more to himself than to her. Still, Lily's gaze lingered. She was so small, so vulnerable, yet so strangely certain that he was the father she had spent her entire life longing for. Mara cleared her throat and approached, voice pitched low. "Sir, the authorities are on their way. I've told security to expect them. They'll coordinate to see if there are any missing persons bulletins about Lily's mother." Alexander nodded, face unreadable. "And the flight?" Mara didn't even bother disguising the regret in her voice. "We've lost tonight's slot. Rescheduling might cost us the entire negotiation. At least it will be delayed for weeks." He exhaled, mentally bracing himself for the business ramifications. But each time he glanced at Lily, her exhausted eyes and trembling shoulders reminded him that maybe, just maybe, some things mattered more. The door slid open again, admitting a tall figure in a navy suit. It was Marcus Rowan, head of Pierce Global's security division. He carried a small folder and wore a solemn expression. "Mr. Pierce, we conducted a quick internal check. None of our employees has a child matching Lily's description. We also scanned security footage. It appears Lily slipped in at ground level through a service entrance. She managed to avoid detection until she reached the helipad." Alexander listened intently. "No sign of the mother anywhere?" Marcus shook his head. "No, the footage only shows Lily on her own. It's bizarre. We do see her push through a side door in the lobby, but after that, the angles are inconclusive. There's no adult leading her." Lily flinched at the mention of her mother, her little face reflecting heartbreak. She set the hot chocolate down carefully, as if at any moment she might need to run. Alexander's posture softened. He sat in the chair next to her, letting his large hand rest lightly on the table. "Lily?" he began, voice gentler than usual. "Can you tell us where you last saw your mom?" She nodded slowly, eyes filling with tears. We were at home," she managed. "Then Mommy got a phone call. She was scared, told me to get my teddy bear, and then we left in a hurry." She sniffed, fiddling with the edge of her too small sweater. "We came here, where the big buildings are. Mommy said if anything happened to her, I should keep going and find you." She lifted her eyes to Alexander, and the uncertain sorrow in them twisted his chest. "Did she say my name?" Alexander asked, frowning. "She said, 'Alexander Pierce is your real name. She always told me Daddy was important. She said you'd help, if she couldn't.'" The room fell silent. Mara exchanged a startled glance with Marcus. The child clearly believed every word. Alexander, feeling an invisible weight pressing down, closed his eyes for a second, rummaging through memories of old relationships, fleeting romances, or one-time encounters. Nothing came up that matched. Could a piece of his past have truly slipped by him so thoroughly? "Lily," he ventured, "did your mother tell you anything else about me? Anything about how we met, or—" She shook her head, tears threatening to spill. "No, just that you'd protect me, that you'd find her, too." Alexander inhaled deeply, scanning Lily's features. She had an oval face, a soft shape to her cheeks, nothing that starkly said, "She's mine." And yet, there was a fleeting familiarity he couldn't deny. He rose to address Marcus. "Alert the staff to expect the police. I want them to see all security footage. Maybe they'll have additional resources to trace Lily's mother's whereabouts, and I need to speak to my legal team, discreetly. He turned back to Lily, forcing a calm he didn't quite feel. I'll do everything possible to find your mom. In the meantime, you're safe here. Lily nodded, a silent tear slipping free. The swirling tension in Alexander's mind only deepened. Why do I feel this sense of responsibility? He asked himself. Why can't I just turn her over to child services and be done with it? Yet some paternal instinct, deep and wholly foreign, kept him anchored. He had never been a father to anyone, never even considered wanting to be. But as he glanced at Lily's sorrow-filled eyes, he realized that if she truly was his daughter, he couldn't turn away. Not now. Moments later, a subdued hush spread through the lounge. 2 uniformed police officers arrived, accompanied by a Child Protective Services representative. They introduced themselves, polite but all business. Alexander briefed them quickly, summarizing the events, how Lily appeared on the helipad, calling him Daddy, and how she insisted her mother was missing. The officers took notes, occasionally glancing at Lily, who was clinging to the stuffed arm of her chair. Despite the intimidating presence of uniformed strangers, she seemed more secure now that Alexander stood nearby. One officer, a woman with kind eyes, approached Lily gently. "Hi there, sweetie. My name is Officer Reyes. Can you tell me about your mommy? What does she look like?" The child recounted all she could. "Mommy is tall, with brown hair. She has a pretty necklace with a heart shape. She was wearing a green jacket." Her young voice wavered with every word. "She got a phone call. She said it was something dangerous." "Dangerous how?" Reyes asked quietly, sharing a concerned glance with her partner. Lily shook her head. "She didn't tell me. She just said we had to hurry, that something about papers wasn't safe." She shrugged helplessly, as if apologizing for not knowing more. Alexander frowned at the mention of papers. The entire scenario reeked of something bigger. He wondered, could Lily's mother have been threatened, kidnapped? If so, by whom and for what reason? Was it blackmail against him? The thought made his stomach clench. For years, business rivals had tried underhanded tactics, but this, using a child, would be a new low. The second officer, a tall man, nodded thoughtfully. "We'll file a missing persons report immediately. Meanwhile, Mr. Pierce, can you clarify your connection to the child?" Alexander's face betrayed tension. "I'm not sure if I have a connection. Lily says I'm her father, but I've never been aware of having a daughter." The officer's eyebrows rose. "Understood. In that case, we may need a paternity test for clarity." Mara, who had been standing at Alexander's side, jumped in. "We'll cooperate fully, of course. Our top priority is Lily's well-being." She shot a discreet glance at Alexander, well aware that the potential scandal could detonate at any moment. Officer Reyes crouched again near Lily. "We'll do everything we can to find your mommy. For tonight, do you have somewhere safe to stay?" Lily's gaze darted to Alexander. The question hung in the air. Legally, Child Protective Services might step in. They would place Lily somewhere neutral until her mother was found or paternity was verified. That was the standard procedure. But Alexander, jaw set, felt a surge of protectiveness that startled even him. "She'll stay with me." The words popped out almost impulsively. The officers exchanged glances. "You're certain, Mr. Pierce?" He nodded firmly. "Absolutely. I have plenty of resources. She'll have her own room, a safe environment. Whatever's necessary, I'll take full responsibility." At that, Lily's face lit with a faint glimmer of relief. She inched closer to Alexander, who settled a reassuring hand on the back of her chair. There was no logic in it, only a profound sense of needing to shield her from further harm. "All right," Officer Reyes agreed. "We'll note that arrangement. But please understand, if it's determined you're not the father and her mother remains missing, Child Protective Services might intervene. For now, though, this seems the best option." Alexander merely nodded, ignoring the alarm bells in his mind about how deeply he was committing. He turned to Mara. "Set up one of the guest suites at the penthouse for Lily, get everything she might need, clothes, pajamas, whatever, and coordinate with my driver. I don't want the press catching wind of this." Mara responded with swift efficiency, though Alexander caught a flicker of concern in her eyes. He gave her a subtle nod, as if telling her he knew the risks. Everything about this move was unprecedented, but he was forging ahead anyway. As the officers wrapped up statements and stepped away to confer with security about any additional footage, Lily finally stood from her seat. She was smaller than he'd realized, her head not reaching much past his waist. She looked up with tentative gratitude. "Thank you for letting me stay," she whispered. I didn't know if you'd want me." Something in Alexander's chest tightened. "You don't have to thank me," he said, voice lower than usual. "And it's not about what I want. Right now, we have to find your mom. That's what matters." Their eyes met in a silent exchange of uncertain trust. Though Lily might be leading Alexander toward a precarious tangle of secrets, he couldn't deny that an invisible thread now bound them. Past or present, father or not, he couldn't abandon this child. As the clock in the lounge chimed softly, marking another hour lost in the swirl of unanswered questions, Alexander walked Lily to the private elevator. Over the city's glittering skyline, he felt the once unshakable foundation of his life shift underfoot. Outside, paparazzi and boards of directors would soon buzz about the abrupt missed flight. Rumors would spread. But inside this quiet elevator, Lily clutched his hand like it was the only lifeline she had. In that moment, her trust felt more important than any billion-dollar deal. Whether or not this child was truly his, one thing was certain. She believed he was the father who could protect her, and for reasons beyond calculation or corporate strategy, Alexander Pierce felt compelled to live up to that belief, even if it meant unraveling every hidden corner of his life to find the truth. After midnight, Alexander's penthouse at the top of the Pierce Global Tower was a sanctuary of marble floors, discreet lighting, and pristine order. The spacious living area, designed with sleek furniture and modern art pieces, tended to feel more like a luxury hotel lobby than a home. Yet, as Alexander escorted Lily inside, his usually serene kingdom felt suddenly inadequate. Mara had arranged everything on short notice. A guest suite down the hallway now contained a child-sized bed with crisp new linens, plus some basic children's clothing she'd managed to purchase en route. Despite the late hour, staff lingered near the private elevator, ready to accommodate the newest and most unexpected guest of the Pierce residence. Lily stepped through the grand foyer, her eyes widening at the soaring ceilings and tall windows overlooking the city lights. One entire wall appeared to be pure glass, revealing a glittering tapestry of skyscrapers below. She hesitated, cheeks flushed, an involuntary reaction to such unfamiliar grandeur. Alexander paused at her side. "It's late," he said, clearing his throat, trying to adopt a gently authoritative tone. "You should rest." Lily nodded quietly. Tension radiated from her small frame. She clutched a worn, stuffed animal Mara had provided from the emergency shopping run. Earlier, Lily had murmured that her real teddy bear was left behind with her mother. Now she held this new plush as if it were a lifeline. Guiding her along polished floors that reflected the city's glowing skyline, Alexander led her to the guest suite. The door slid open soundlessly to reveal a minimalist but comfortable space. A plush bed, a simple nightstand, a reading lamp whose gentle glow offset the dark shapes of modern artwork on the walls. Under normal circumstances, this was the sort of place Alexander reserved for visiting executives or important associates. Now, it would be Lily's temporary refuge. He stood awkwardly for a moment, watching her slip onto the bed's edge, where she ran a tentative hand over the comforter. She looked so small against the expansive pillows. The overhead light cast faint shadows across her face, highlighting the uncertainty in her expression. "Do you need anything else?" he offered, his tone gentler than usual. He was accustomed to delegating such questions to staff or assistants. To do so himself felt strangely intimate. Lily shook her head. "Thank you," she whispered. Then, glancing around with a flicker of anxiety, she asked, "Will you be here in the morning?" The question tugged at a place in Alexander's chest that he couldn't quite name. People in his world seldom sought emotional reassurance. They sought deals, contracts, or approvals. The question, would he be there, cut through all that noise with heartbreaking simplicity. "Yes," he said quietly, "I'll be here." Relief softened her features. She slid under the blankets, hugging the stuffed animal. Alexander reached out to switch off the main overhead light, leaving only the small lamp's soft glow. "Good night, Lily," he murmured, turning to go. Before he could leave, her voice, small and wavering, made him pause. "Daddy?" He froze. "Yes?" She swallowed. "My mom said... She said that if I ever found you, I should trust you. I do. I trust you." She fell silent as if awaiting some response to that fragile confession. For Alexander, it felt as though the world had slowed to a hush. The weight of her faith settled over him like a solemn vow he'd never asked to make. He realized with startling clarity that Lily's entire sense of security now depended on him, whether or not he was truly her father. "I won't let you down," he answered softly, hearing the unaccustomed gentleness in his own words. He wasn't fully sure he believed it, but it was what she needed. Quietly he left the room, closing the door behind him. In the corridor, Mara stood waiting. "How is she?" she asked, voice subdued. Alexander exhaled. Exhausted, terrified, but she's trying to be brave. Mara nodded, then consulted the tablet in her arms. "Sir, I've set up a meeting first thing tomorrow with your legal counsel. They want to expedite a paternity test. The police have already forwarded the missing persons report. If Lily's mother is truly in danger, we need leads as soon as possible." They moved through the penthouse's quiet halls to Alexander's private study, a sophisticated space lined with custom bookshelves and digital screens that displayed stock tickers or global news. Usually, he found comfort in the sleek lines of this domain, but now his mind buzzed with uncertainty. "Contact every security detail we have," he instructed, settling behind a glass-topped desk that seemed cold under the overhead light. "I want them digging for any sign of who might threaten Lily's mother. Also..." He hesitated, pressing the heels of his palms against his eyes. "We should look into my own background, old relationships, acquaintances. If Lily's mother is from my past, I need the entire story." His voice wavered on that last sentence, betraying the anxiety he wouldn't normally show. Mara nodded, tapping notes. "I'll start with your travel logs, philanthropic appearances, and social events from about 6 or 7 years ago. If Lily is around that age, that window makes sense." He glanced at her. "And Mara, do it discreetly. I don't want tabloids sniffing around this, not until we know more." She offered a thin, understanding smile. Alexander Pierce had built a career on controlling the narrative around his brand, ensuring the press only reported what he wanted them to. But this situation was a ticking time bomb. If Lily truly was his daughter, the story could explode in the media. "I'll keep it contained," she said, "for as long as possible." After Mara left, Alexander sank into the leather chair, head heavy with fatigue. Through the panoramic window of the study, the city's neon pulse reminded him of all that was still happening beyond these walls: meetings, deadlines, deals. Yet for once he found himself unable to focus on any of it. Instead, he pictured Lily's tear-streaked face, the lingering fear in her eyes. He recalled that single word she'd spoken as he left her room: "Daddy." Somehow that word had unraveled him more thoroughly than any corporate crisis. If Lily's mother was out there in trouble, the blame might lie with him. something from his own life, from an earlier time colliding with the present. The possibility made his gut clench. There was no easy solution. In business, he excelled at direct, decisive actions, mergers, acquisitions, reorganizing entire divisions. But fatherhood? That was a territory he had never planned to chart. And the fear that Lily might be a child he'd unwittingly left behind? It was a fear that cut deeper than he wanted to admit. Sometime before dawn, Alexander found himself standing in the darkened hallway outside Lily's door. Sleep had evaded him, and he'd paced the penthouse in restless circles until he realized that just being near her room offered a strange solace. He wondered if she was asleep or if nightmares about her missing mother kept her awake. He turned, noticing a soft crack under the door. The bedside lamp was still on. Without fully deciding, he knocked gently. No response. Slowly, he opened the door a few inches. Inside, Lily was curled up, hugging the stuffed animal. The covers were twisted around her. Her small face glistened with the remnants of tears, but she was asleep. The lamp's glow played across her cheeks. In that moment, she looked heartbreakingly vulnerable. Just a child who'd lost everything but the fragile hope that she'd found her father. Alexander stepped closer, intending to straighten the covers. But as soon as he touched the blanket, Lily stirred, eyes fluttering open. She looked at him in sleepy confusion. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I didn't mean to wake you." "It's okay," she murmured, rubbing her eyes. "Is it morning?" "Not yet," Alexander answered, glancing at the clock on the nightstand, 3:45 a.m. "You should get more rest." She nodded, stifling a yawn. Then, unexpectedly, she scooted a little to one side, making space on the edge of the bed as if inviting him to sit. Alexander hesitated, but Lily's silent plea tugged at him until he lowered himself to the mattress. The bed dipped slightly under his weight, and the faint smell of vanilla from the new linens filled the air. For a moment, they sat in the hush, the city lights blinking beyond the window. Lily's voice, fragile yet curious, broke the silence. "When I find Mommy, can we all be together again?" It was a question loaded with innocence and heartbreak, a child's simplistic hope that everything broken could be made whole. Alexander didn't know how to answer. If Lily was truly his daughter, her mother might be an old flame he barely remembered, or maybe someone he once dated more seriously. But would that mean they could become a family? The question felt colossal. "I don't know," he said carefully. "First, let's find your mom. Then we'll figure out everything else." Lily seemed to accept that, her eyelids drooping again. "She always said you were a good man, even if you didn't know about me." A pang of guilt shot through Alexander. Had Lily's mother been waiting for years, perhaps lacking the courage to approach him directly? Maybe she'd tried, and he'd brushed her off without even realizing. His memory offered no clarity, only more questions. "It'll be all right," he said, though he wasn't sure who he was reassuring, Lily or himself. She closed her eyes, drifting back to sleep. He waited until her breathing steadied before standing up, gently tucking the blanket around her shoulders. Lingering a moment longer, he studied her face, the delicate nose, the curve of her brow. If there was a resemblance, he couldn't place it specifically, yet a flicker of recognition kept haunting him. Stepping back into the hallway, Alexander eased the door shut. His mind raced with next steps: the paternity test, the private investigation, the urgent search for Lily's mother. The clock read just after 4 a.m., which meant the day's demands would begin in a couple of hours. He usually needed only 4 or 5 hours of sleep to function, but tonight he'd probably get none. He walked to his personal suite, but the massive bedroom with its king-size bed felt strangely less like a refuge and more like a hollow space. Sleep wasn't coming. Instead, he found himself opening a hidden cabinet beside the large oak desk. Inside were a few precious keepsakes, rarely looked at, never discussed. a photograph of him at college graduation, another of him shaking hands with an older mentor who'd helped jumpstart his career. The third photo was from a black tie gala many years ago, he and an unnamed date smiling for the camera, a swirl of champagne glasses in the background. He lifted the photo carefully, searching for any hint of something that might connect to Lily's mother. But the woman in the snapshot had curly blonde hair, not brown. He sighed, frustrated. The truth might lie in some other photo, or in some half-buried memory. Tomorrow, or rather today, he'd comb through everything. As he returned the photo to its place, he caught a glimpse of his reflection in the glass. The expression staring back was one he barely recognized. Uncertainty, mingled with a fierce determination to uncover the truth. By the time faint light tinted the horizon, Alexander had made a silent vow. He would turn over every stone, call in every favor, do whatever was necessary. He wouldn't abandon Lily, nor would he leave her mother's fate in the shadows. That morning, his staff and associates would arrive with pressing questions about last night's missed flight, the deals hanging in limbo, the investors demanding explanations. But in that quiet moment, while the city still slept, Alexander understood that something more important than a multi-billion-dollar merger had seized his life. A little girl had taken a seat at the center of his priorities. And so, as the first dawn rays gleamed off the penthouse windows, he stood alone in his suite, phone in hand, already making calls, arranging resources, planning, searching. Lily had entrusted him with her fragile hope, and he, in turn, resolved that no matter where this path led, he would see it through. The sun rose over the metropolis like a golden tide, illuminating the vast glass facade of Pierce Global Tower. Normally, Alexander Pierce would have been in the conference room by dawn, briefing his executives, planning strategies, and directing the day's agenda. This morning, however, his schedule was about to be turned upside down. He had barely managed a few hours of restless dozing when his alarm chimed, echoing in the penthouse's master suite. With a groan, he switched it off, slipped on a pressed shirt, and tried to center himself. His thoughts drifted instantly to Lily. Was she awake yet? Had she slept any better than he did? By the time he entered the marble-tiled foyer, staff were already preparing the penthouse for his morning routine. Fresh coffee, a neat stack of documents on the side table, these were normal sights. But now there was also a child's cereal bowl set out, along with a small glass of orange juice. Subtle differences that hinted at just how drastically life had changed overnight. He found Lily in the kitchen area, perched on a stool by the breakfast bar. She wore new clothes, simple jeans and a pale yellow t-shirt that Mara had procured. The outfit hung a little loose on her slight frame, but at least she looked more comfortable than in the too small sweater from before. "Good morning," Alexander greeted, attempting a smile. Sleep still tugged at the corners of his eyes, but he mustered as much calm energy as he could. "How? Did you sleep?" Lily paused, spoon halfway to her mouth. "It was okay. I woke up a few times." She gave him a tentative look as if checking whether her presence was still acceptable in his pristine domain. Alexander nodded, stepping closer. "If you need anything, you tell me, all right?" She nodded, biting her lip. Something about her vulnerability forced him to slow down, to speak gently. In the high-stakes world of corporate takeovers, he never had such a reason to soften, but this morning, it felt natural. He poured himself coffee, the aroma filling the sleek kitchen. Lily's eyes followed him, as if she still wasn't quite sure she could believe this was real. Alexander took a sip, feeling the edge of fatigue lift a little. Glancing at the time on his phone, he saw an entire column of back-to-back appointments. But half those meetings might as well be cancelled. How could he focus on corporate details when Lily's mother was missing? As if sensing his thoughts, Mara walked in, tablet tucked under her arm. "Good morning," she said in a businesslike tone, though her eyes flicked warmly toward Lily. "Sir, your legal and security teams have arrived. I've set them up in the private lounge on the 58th floor. Whenever you're ready." Alexander nodded, turning to Lily. "I'll have to meet with some people now. Important people who can help us find your mom." She gripped her spoon tighter. "Can I come with you?" His first instinct was to say no. A swirl of complications crowded his mind. These were lawyers, investigators, a world of grown-up chaos. But something in Lily's uncertain gaze gave him pause. She had no one else to rely on. "You can," he answered slowly, "but it might be a bit boring. They'll ask a lot of questions, and some of them might not be easy to hear." She swallowed. "I'll be okay." "All right." He ruffled the top of her hair gently, an act so unfamiliar he almost laughed at himself. Then he added, "Finish your breakfast. We'll leave in a few minutes." Once Lily had eaten, Alexander led her to a private elevator that would take them to the 58th floor, his personal domain for critical meetings. Lily clutched the stuffed animal that Mara had gotten her, something she didn't let out of reach for even a second. The elevator doors slid open onto a luxurious lounge, deep chairs, abstract art along the walls, panoramic windows showcasing the skyline. It was a place designed to impress top clients. But instead of clients, 4 individuals waited. 2 corporate lawyers in sharp suits, plus Marcus Rowan, the head of security, and a woman in a modest blazer, Alexander's personal investigator, Natalie Cho. "Good morning, Mr. Pierce," said Cho, stepping forward. She cast a brief, kind smile at Lily. "Good morning to you as well." Lily ducked her head shyly. Alexander gestured for everyone to sit. "We have a lot to cover," he began, keeping his voice measured. "First, paternity. We need to confirm or rule it out as soon as possible." One of the lawyers, a tall man named Hastings, adjusted his tie. "We've arranged for a discreet DNA test. A private medical professional will come to collect samples, mouth swabs, that sort of thing, and we'll expedite the results. In a day or 2, we'll know definitively if Lily is your daughter." Lily's eyes flicked between Hastings and Alexander, anxiety surfacing in her expression. She didn't speak, but she hugged her stuffed animal closer as if worried about the outcome. Alexander laid a hand on her shoulder, feeling her tension. "It'll be all right," he said quietly. He turned to Marcus Rowan. "Any progress on the search for her mother?" Marcus, arms folded, shook his head with frustration. "We've got the entire security network combing through city cameras, but so far no hits on a woman matching Lily's description. Brown hair, green jacket, heart-shaped necklace. Without more data, like a name, it's complicated." "What about official missing persons alerts?" Alexander pressed. Marcus sighed. "The police are working on it, but there's a backlog, and we only gave them limited details. If Lily's mother used an alias or avoided typical routes, that complicates matters." Alexander frowned, fists tightening on the armrests. He glanced at Lily, who listened quietly, absorbing every word. She might not fully understand, but she understood enough. There was no immediate sign of her mother. Natalie Cho cleared her throat. "Mr. Pierce, I've started reviewing your personal history from about 7 years ago. Events, charities, conferences. Nothing stands out yet, but I'm only halfway through. I'll keep digging. If Lily's mother is someone you encountered back then, we might find a clue. Photos, guest lists, a pattern you missed." He nodded solemnly. A part of him dreaded what she might uncover, not because he feared wrongdoing, but because he feared a truth that would shatter the life he'd constructed. If Lily was his child, it meant that at some point he'd failed to recognize or accept a responsibility that was rightfully his. Cho tented her fingers. "If I may ask Lily a few questions, nothing invasive, just enough to see if she recalls any names, addresses, or specifics." Alexander looked to Lily. "Is that okay?" She glanced at Cho, the corners of her eyes pinched. Then she nodded. "It's okay." The investigator smiled warmly, keeping her voice gentle. "Do you remember the name of the street or neighborhood where you lived with your mom?" Lily shook her head. "We moved a lot." Do you remember the last place, maybe what it looked like? Lily fidgeted, thinking hard. It was a small apartment. Painted walls, kind of a peach color. I remember Mommy complaining about the hot water not working right. She wrinkled her nose, then added, "We only lived there a couple months." Cho scribbled notes. "All right. Did your mom have any friends who visited? Maybe someone who called her by name?" "She had a friend once. I think her name was Kara, or Kara. She was nice. She brought pizza and said something about papers being important." Lily's voice shook a bit. "Papers," repeated Alexander, remembering Lily's mention of that word before. Could it be legal documents? Something that put her mom in danger? Marcus Rowan leaned forward, brow furrowed. If these are documents that implicate someone powerful, someone who might threaten Lily's mother, this could be connected to you, sir. A rival or an enemy from past deals? Alexander considered that possibility with mounting apprehension. He had plenty of adversaries in the corporate arena, but had any stooped so low as to target him through a child? It was a new and chilling thought. Meanwhile, Cho continued, "Did you ever see what those papers looked like, Lily?" "No," she replied softly. "Mommy wouldn't let me. She said it was grown-up stuff." Cho nodded, scribbling more. "Thank you. That helps more than you know." Sensing Lily's distress, Alexander leaned closer. "You did great," he told her gently. She managed a weak smile. Just then, the lounge door opened and a uniformed woman entered. Her ID badge identified her as a medical technician. She carried a small kit. "I'm here for the DNA swabs," she announced professionally. Lily's grip on her stuffed animal tightened. Alexander felt an odd twist in his stomach. He stood, motioning to her that it was all right. Together they followed the technician to a quiet corner of the lounge. The process was swift. Just a soft swab inside each of their cheeks, placed into labeled vials. "Thank you," the technician said, sealing the samples. "I'll courier these to the lab now. Results should be back within 48 hours at the latest." Lily exhaled, a small sigh that spoke volumes about the anxiety coiled within her. Alexander offered her a reassuring nod, though inside, his own pulse throbbed with tension. 2 days, and they'd know the truth. When they returned to the main table, Hastings the lawyer cleared his throat. "We've done what we can for now regarding paternity. Next up, we need to manage the press, Mr. Pierce. Word will spread that you canceled last night's flight. Already rumors circulate about an emergency at the tower." Alexander's jaw clenched. He hated how quickly speculation turned into corporate gossip. He also knew any sign of weakness could unsettle shareholders. "We'll release a short statement," he said firmly. "Personal matter, no details. Emphasize the merger negotiations were merely postponed." Hastings nodded, making notes. "Understood. But if the story about Lily leaks, it might overshadow everything else." Alexander felt Lily's eyes on him, her confusion and fear at the mention of leaking. He gave her what he hoped was a reassuring glance, then addressed Hastings in a cool tone. "I'll handle it." The meeting wrapped up with everyone assigned tasks. Cho continuing her investigation, Marcus stepping up the search, Hastings handling PR lines and the medical test en route to the lab. As they rose, Lily clung to Alexander's side, looking small amidst a swirl of towering adults in expensive suits. "I'll be at my office," Alexander told them. "Mara, please guide Lily to a quieter spot, maybe my private lounge on the same floor. She can rest there while I handle a few calls." "No," Lily blurted, surprising everyone. She looked at Alexander with alarm. "Please, don't leave me alone." Her plea made the tension in his chest tighten like a vice. He could feel the gazes of his staff. In normal circumstances, he would dismiss such a request. He never allowed personal matters to disrupt his schedule. But how could he deny her that reassurance now, after everything? "All right," he conceded. "You'll come with me to the office. but it might be dull." She nodded, relieved. Even the attorneys looked quietly moved by the exchange. Moments later, Alexander guided Lily through a private corridor that led to his executive office suite. The air smelled faintly of polished wood and fresh coffee, an environment that usually sharpened his focus. Today he felt anything but sharpened. He felt like he was juggling two separate realities: the intense world of corporate deals and the newly discovered realm of protecting a frightened child. His office, lined with bookshelves of financial reports and adorned with abstract art, typically served as a domain of quiet authority. Now, Lily stood by the large window, gazing at the city below. She had never been this high up. Her awe was visible. Alexander sank behind his desk, scanning emails. The company board demanded urgent explanations for the missed flight. Investors were restless. Competitors might use this hiccup to strike. Yet even as he strategized, every glance fell back on Lily, making sure she was all right. Caught between two worlds, he silently resolved that if Lily's mother was out there, perhaps hurt or taken, he would find her. He would unearth whatever secrets threatened them, even if it meant unraveling a part of his own past. And until the test results arrived, he would not waver in his unexpected role of guardian. "Daddy?" Lily ventured, her voice interrupting his thoughts. He looked up. She rarely called him Alexander. For her, he was simply Daddy, a word that felt like both a responsibility and a fragile hope. "Yeah?" he asked gently. "Do you think Mommy's okay? Do you really think she's okay?" Her eyes shone with unshed tears as she gazed at the sprawling city, perhaps imagining her mother lost somewhere in its depths. Alexander stood, moving to her side by the window. Outside, the skyline sparkled with promise and danger alike, a fitting reflection of the turmoil inside him. "I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure she's safe," he said. The vow resonated in the hushed office, solidifying the line he was willing to cross. As Lily rested her head against his arm, Alexander found himself praying, silently, that his promise wouldn't be too late. In the distance, the sun climbed higher, spreading light across the city of skyscrapers and hidden secrets. He braced himself for the storm that was certain to come. The sleek lines of Alexander Pierce's executive office seemed to vibrate with an undercurrent of tension. Outside, the skyscrapers stood in stoic rows, steel and glass reflecting a deceptively peaceful afternoon sun. But inside, the hush felt weighted with every unspoken fear. Lily sat in a comfortable corner chair, hugging her stuffed toy as Alexander concluded yet another tense phone call, his third one in less than an hour. He set the phone down and pinched the bridge of his nose, exhaling. On normal days, calls like these would revolve around negotiations, investment strategies, details he handled with cool efficiency. Today, however, his phone had erupted with a different crisis every few minutes. Anxious board members demanding updates, overseas partners who had heard rumors of a personal emergency, and ironically, even the pilot who needed to reschedule the helicopter flight to salvage the deal. Alexander's replies had been guarded and repetitive. Yes, the merger talks were postponed, not cancelled. Yes, the situation was under control. No, it wouldn't derail Pierce Global's future plans. Yet as soon as the line disconnected, he slumped back in his high-backed leather chair. He could handle corporate fires, but the personal stakes here were brand new territory, frighteningly beyond the standard cutthroat marketplace. Someone's mother, possibly the mother of a child who believed he was her father, was missing, potentially in danger, and Lily needed him. The solution wasn't a standard pivot in strategy or infusion of capital. It was messy, uncertain, and it involved real people's lives. Lily, sensing his mood, watched him with solemn eyes. "Is everything okay?" she asked, voice trembling slightly. Alexander offered a tight smile. "It will be," he said, nodding more for his own benefit than hers. "I promise." Just then, Mara appeared at the office door, iPad in hand. She was a pillar of composure, every hair in place, her expression efficiently polite. "Sir, Miss Cho has arrived. She says it's urgent." Alexander's posture straightened, adrenaline flickering through him. Cho was the investigator combing through his past appearances and Lily's mother's possible whereabouts. "Send her in." Mara stepped aside, and Natalie Cho entered with quick strides. She wore the same modest blazer from earlier, but her eyes sparkled with new intensity. In her hand was a slim binder. "Mr. Pierce?" she greeted, bobbing a nod at Lily in a gesture of warmth. "I might have found a lead." Alexander gestured for her to proceed. Lily tucked her legs beneath her, as if bracing for whatever truth might be revealed. Cho set the binder on Alexander's desk and flipped it open. Several photographs, screen captures from old event coverage, glossed under the overhead lighting. I cross-referenced the timeline from about 6 to 7 years ago. That's roughly how old Lily appears, give or take. There was a particular charity gala in upstate New York that you attended just over 6 years ago. According to the guest list, a woman named Isabel Carter was present. No direct interactions with you in the official record, but security footage suggests you two spoke privately at the event. Alexander's brow furrowed, scanning the photograph. It showed him in a sharp tuxedo standing near an outdoor pavilion. Nearby, a woman with brown hair turned halfway from the camera. She wore a dark green dress, her face partially obscured. "I vaguely remember that gala," he said, racking his memory. "It was a fundraiser for a children's hospital. I was a major donor. Hundreds of guests roamed around. I can't place every conversation." Cho pulled out another photo. This one, a candid shot from a different angle, revealed more of the woman's features: a soft jawline, warm but worried eyes, and a small pendant glinting at her throat. "Your security detail from that night recorded a note that you excused yourself from the main crowd to speak with Ms. Carter near the garden area. That conversation lasted about 20 minutes. Alexander's heartbeat quickened. 20 minutes. That's not a passing hello. He studied the image again, trying to summon details. Was that her name, though? Carter? Cho shrugged. Could be an alias, or maybe her real name. Records from that event are incomplete. Some guests used sponsor tickets, so background checks were minimal. Lily leaned forward as if wanting a closer look. Is that her?" she asked in a small voice. Alexander swallowed. He couldn't be sure. The woman's hair color was brown, matching Lily's mention, and the faint glint at her neck could be a heart-shaped necklace, but the photo resolution was poor. "It might be," he murmured. Mara, who remained near the door, angled her head. "If that is Lily's mother, what does it mean?" Cho spoke calmly. "It suggests she attended this gala specifically to see you. Possibly she wanted to discuss something important given the length of that private chat. If so, it might have been the start, or some part, of a connection that neither of you made public." Alexander's thoughts reeled. He tried to recall the conversation. He pictured the garden lights strung between trees, the murmur of music from the main hall. Vague memory teased him. A woman pulling him aside, speaking earnestly about something. It was overshadowed by the swirl of donors, VIPs, and colleagues. Could it have been an urgent request for help? Something about the hospital? He truly couldn't remember. Lily clutched her stuffed animal, eyes fixed on the photo. "Mommy always wore a necklace that was shaped like a heart," she offered timidly. "She never took it off." Cho nodded. "That's a strong clue. I've asked Marcus Rowan's team to trace Ms. Carter further, addresses, other aliases, anything. With luck, we'll confirm if she's Lily's mother." Alexander inhaled sharply, pushing away a surge of guilt. If this was indeed the mother, and if she'd come to him back then, maybe she'd tried to reveal her pregnancy or ask for help. Yet he had no recollection of doing anything about it. Had he dismissed her concerns? Forgotten them altogether? The possibility made his chest tighten. "Thank you," he told Cho. "Keep me updated every step of the way. We need answers now, especially if she's in danger. Cho gathered her files, nodding efficiently. I'll continue digging. In the meantime, watch your back, Mr. Pierce. If this is about blackmail or sensitive documents, someone might be targeting Lily as leverage. A flicker of protective anger flared in Alexander. He glanced at Lily, who blinked in confusion, obviously catching the seriousness of the exchange. They won't touch her, Alexander said quietly, the vow laced with a quiet steel. Once Cho left, silence settled in the office. Lily's shoulders sagged as if the weight of uncertainty pressed her down. So, maybe you did know, Mommy, but you don't remember? Her young voice trembled, equal parts sadness and hope. Alexander moved around the desk to kneel beside her chair. There are a lot of things I did back then, lots of people, lots of business deals. I'm trying to remember, but if she's the one in that photo, we'll find her, I promise. He placed a hand lightly on Lily's arm, feeling the tension in her small frame. She nodded, tears brimming, but she didn't pull away. The brief contact seemed to help her breathe a bit easier. A soft knock interrupted them, Mara again stepping forward with that professional calm that never faltered. Sir, the board of directors is assembling downstairs. They want a status update on the merger and on your family emergency. She glanced apologetically at Lily. Alexander rose, exhaling. All right, let's get this over with. 15 minutes later, he stood at the head of a polished mahogany table in a skybox-like boardroom. Through the panoramic windows, the city's grid stretched out like an abstract painting, but the men and women at the table were focused entirely on him. They were top executives and major shareholders, people who had invested not just money but their reputations in Alexander's leadership. Lily waited discreetly on a small sofa against the wall, guided there by one of Alexander's assistants. She remained in earshot, but out of the direct line of inquiry, fiddling nervously with the stuffed toy on her lap. Board member after board member spoke up, peppering Alexander with concerns. A silver-haired woman, Ms. Yates, cleared her throat. Mr. Pierce, we understand personal emergencies arise, but the timing is critical. The merger with Kronos Industries must proceed quickly, or we risk losing leverage in the negotiation. Could you confirm if you'll be able to travel tomorrow? Alexander's jaw tightened. I'm working on rescheduling, but I can't leave town until I address the situation here. I have a missing persons case that needs immediate attention. An older man with thick glasses frowned. Yes, we've heard rumors. Is it true a child appeared at the tower last night claiming you're her father? Is that the emergency? A hush blanketed the room. Lily's face paled from her perch on the sofa. Alexander cast her a reassuring glance before turning to address the board. That's partially correct. There are aspects I can't discuss, an ongoing investigation. But suffice it to say, yes, a little girl arrived in distress and it's possible she's related to me. Nervous shifting among the directors. One cleared his throat. Alexander, we're all sympathetic, of course, but we must also consider the corporate ramifications. The press, investors, your schedule. Everything is at stake. When can you confirm paternity and get back to business as usual? At that, frustration flickered in Alexander's eyes. For years, he had directed these board members with unwavering authority. Rarely did they question him. Rarely did they see him struggle in any personal capacity. I'll have clarity in roughly 48 hours, he said, voice calm but clipped. Until then, my focus is on ensuring Lily's safety. I trust we can manage any short-term delays or PR concerns. Ms. Yates exchanged a glance with the others. If the child is indeed your daughter, how do you plan to proceed? Alexander hesitated, feeling Lily's eyes on his back. We'll handle that when the time comes, he said. My personal affairs won't weaken Pierce Global. You have my word. The promise hovered in the air like a challenge. He was reminding them all that he was still in control, no matter how personal the crisis. Slowly, the tension lessened. The board began discussing fallback strategies for the merger. possible statements to reassure stakeholders, and contingency plans for the next negotiation window. Alexander responded succinctly where he could, but his thoughts kept drifting to Lily. She looked so alone, dwarfed by the imposing architecture of the boardroom. At one point, Ms. Yates's gaze softened. "You know, Alexander, we do hope the child's situation resolves well. You've built an empire, but if there's one thing that might matter more—" She didn't finish, but Alexander understood. Something more than the empire, something profoundly human. When the board meeting finally adjourned, Lily rose from the sofa with visible relief. Alexander moved to her side. "You okay?" he asked gently. She nodded. "They seemed mean," she whispered. "They don't understand." He gave a quiet laugh, flat, a bit weary. "They're just worried about money and deals. It's what they do." Taking Lily's hand, he guided her back to his office suite, passing staff who parted like a small wave, curious eyes discreetly tracking the child at Alexander's side. It was undeniably unusual. Alexander Pierce, the epitome of cool detachment, walking hand in hand with a little girl whose identity still wasn't confirmed. Back in his office, Lily climbed into a chair with her stuffed toy. "Daddy," she said, voice tentative, "all those people, they kept talking about you being important. You really are important, huh?" He sank into his own chair, letting out a breath. "I have responsibilities, yes, but right now, the only thing that matters is finding your mom." Lily held his gaze, her small face reflecting the seriousness of an adult. Will they let you do that? Those people? They want you to leave." Alexander's chest tightened. "I'll do what's necessary," he assured, reaching across the desk to gently tap her arm. "No one can stop me from helping you." She exhaled, tension easing from her shoulders. "Thank you," she whispered. Just then, Mara's discreet knock preceded her entry. She held a phone in her hand, expression taut with urgency. "Sir, Marcus Rowan wants you in the security hub now. They might have something on the city cameras. Lily's mother, or at least a possible sighting." Alexander shot to his feet. "Keep Lily here, or—" He paused, glancing at the child who stared back with wide eyes. "Please," Lily pleaded, "I want to come with you. I need to know." He hesitated for only a moment. "All right, let's go." The security hub, located a few floors down, was a state-of-the-art command center with walls of live camera feeds from across the city. Marcus waited by a large monitor flanked by two technicians. As soon as Alexander and Lily entered, he gestured them over. "I'll get right to it," Marcus said briskly, nodding a greeting to Lily. "We ran a citywide analysis for anyone matching your mother's general description. Early this morning, around the time Lily arrived at the tower, one camera at a bus station caught a glimpse of a brown-haired woman in a green jacket. He tapped a keyboard, and the monitor played a grainy clip. They saw a figure hurrying across the frame. She had her head down, hugging herself against the night chill. It was hard to see her face, but the silhouette suggested mid-height, slender build, hair pulled into a loose ponytail. And yes, the jacket was green. Lily sucked in a sharp breath, inching closer to the screen. That could be her," she murmured. "Her hair looks like that, and her jacket is that color." Marcus paused the video, zooming in. "We can't see her necklace or face clearly, but the height and build match the guess we had. She seems to be carrying a small bag, possibly a purse or documents, and she was alone." Alexander's heart hammered. "Do we know where she went after the bus station?" Marcus's expression fell. "That's the problem. She left the station, walked around the corner, and the next camera doesn't catch her. We lose the trail." A fresh wave of frustration coursed through Alexander. So close, yet so far. He glanced at Lily, who stared at the paused image with longing. If that was indeed her mother, she was out there, possibly frightened and on the run. One of the technicians spoke up. "We're cross-referencing other cameras in that vicinity. There's a blind spot, though. Some cameras were down for maintenance and the rest are angled away. We'll keep searching." Alexander placed a hand gently on Lily's back. "We won't stop until we find her," he promised. She nodded, blinking back tears. Marcus cleared his throat. "I'll keep you updated as soon as we have more. In the meantime, I suggest stepping up personal security. If Lily's mother is in danger, the threat could extend to Lily. And to you," he added pointedly. Alexander nodded. He was well acquainted with personal security measures, but this time it wasn't about business espionage or a rival's sabotage. It was about real threats that could harm Lily or her mother. He turned to Mara, who stood quietly nearby. "Ensure Lily is accompanied by a trusted guard everywhere in the building. Double-check visitor logs. No one steps onto these floors without clearance." "Yes, sir," Mara said, expression resolute. The group dispersed, tension humming. Lily lingered before the monitor, staring at the frozen frame of the mysterious woman. Alexander knelt beside her so that their eyes were level with the screen. "We'll find more footage. Don't lose hope." She sniffled once, nodding bravely. "Okay." They headed back to the elevator, the halls echoing with the hush of unanswered questions. If that woman was indeed Lily's mother, she was on the move, maybe searching for help, or maybe running from an unseen danger, or an even bleaker thought, perhaps someone had intercepted her after that final camera captured her image. The possibilities clenched at Alexander's heart. Inside the elevator, Lily pressed close to him. He draped an arm around her shoulders, offering silent reassurance. In the reflection of the polished doors, he glimpsed himself, a man used to unwavering control, now burdened by doubt and protective resolve. Lily's face, half hidden, radiated trust. At last, the elevator reached Alexander's executive floor. As they stepped out, Lily peered up at him with an unspoken question. He gave her a soft smile. "We'll keep searching, Lily. Every hour, every resource. We won't give up." Her eyes glistened with gratitude. "Thank you, Dad, Alexander," she corrected shyly, as if unsure which name he preferred. Alexander's throat tightened at the word Dad. He still didn't know if biology confirmed their bond, but in spirit, the bond was already there. "Call me whatever you want," he said gently. "What matters is that I'm here for you." With that, they walked the hallway toward his office, the city's sun casting long stripes of light across the shining floors. Each step felt heavier with the knowledge that though they'd found a clue, the path ahead remained perilous and unclear. Danger loomed somewhere, entangled with Lily's mother's fate. And Alexander Pierce, billionaire mogul once unstoppable in all pursuits, was prepared to fight in an entirely new arena. The desperate hope of reuniting a missing woman with the child who believed in him, no matter what it cost. That evening, Alexander and Lily sat side by side in a quiet corner of the penthouse library. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city was awash in twilight, pulsing with headlights and neon signs. But here, surrounded by tall shelves of leather-bound volumes, the world felt hushed, almost cocooned. The penthouse staff had dimmed the overhead lights, leaving only a soft glow from the reading lamps. Lily clutched a children's book that Mara had found for her, some whimsical tale about a kitten's adventures. She turned its pages slowly, gaze flicking between the colorful illustrations and the man who might be her father. Alexander, meanwhile, tried to read a thick dossier that Natalie Cho had forwarded, a partial background report on Isabel Carter. His eyes scanned line after line of inconclusive data, only for his thoughts to drift again and again to the little girl at his side. He finally closed the dossier and glanced down at Lily. She looked tired, the day's events etched into her wary expression. "How are you doing?" he asked, voice soft so as not to shatter the calm of the library. She mustered a small shrug. "I wish we could find Mom faster." He nodded, guilt coiling in his chest. "I know. I'm working on it." He had a meeting scheduled with Cho first thing in the morning. She had hinted at an important development, though she wouldn't share details over the phone. Lily exhaled shakily. "Thank you. For everything. For letting me stay here. For trying to help." A wave of paternal protectiveness hit him, a feeling as new and unfamiliar as it was powerful. He was used to subordinates thanking him for deals closed or career boosts, never for providing shelter or emotional support. "You don't need to thank me," he said gently. "I told you. Until we find your mom, you can count on me." She gave a small, grateful nod and turned another page, though he doubted she could concentrate on the silly kitten story. "Is that more stuff about my mom?" she asked, eyeing the closed dossier on his lap. He hesitated. "Sort of. It's about someone who might be your mom. We're not sure yet. Her name might be Isabel Carter. We don't know if that's her real name or an alias." Lily repeated the name in a whisper, as if testing its sound. It didn't appear to spark recognition. She shook her head slightly. "Mom never said that name. She always just told me to call her Mommy. She didn't let me use her name in public." The remark struck Alexander. Why would Lily's mother hide her identity, even from her own child? Fear of being found by someone? Avoiding legal issues? The questions tumbled around his mind. A soft knock at the library door broke the silence. Mara stepped in, her face lined with a day's worth of accumulated stress. "Sir, we've received word that the lab courier is on schedule. The results of the paternity test should arrive by midday tomorrow." She spoke with quiet efficiency, but Alexander saw her gaze flit to Lily with a glimmer of compassion. Lily froze, eyes widening. Clearly the test weighed on her. If it confirmed Alexander was her father, then at least one piece of her life would be certain. If not, Alexander shoved that possibility aside. She had pinned such hope on him. The idea that it could all unravel in one lab report made his stomach churn. "Thank you, Mara," he said evenly, standing. He squeezed Lily's shoulder lightly. "We'll know soon," he murmured. Lily nodded, swallowing. She tried to school her features into bravery, but a tremor in her hand gave her away. Mara hovered a moment. "Also, sir, you asked me to discreetly gather some items for Lily. A few changes of clothes, toiletries, and such. They're ready in her suite." Alexander offered a grateful dip of his head. "Good. Lily, do you want to go get changed into pajamas? Then maybe we can have some dinner brought up." Lily perked up slightly at the mention of dinner, but clutched the book against her chest. "I can go by myself," she said, standing with a hint of nervous confidence. "I'll be right back." After she left, Mara lingered, stepping closer to Alexander. She lowered her voice. "Sir, I don't mean to intrude, but you seem very determined to help Lily, no matter the outcome of the test. May I ask, is that wise, professionally speaking?" He recognized the concern behind her eyes. Mara was always mindful of his best interests, both personal and corporate. He sighed, glancing at the door Lily had just exited. "Professionally speaking, it's probably reckless, but she's a child who came to me for protection. I can't just walk away." Mara smiled faintly. "I understand. And if the test confirms you are her father, well, that changes everything, doesn't it?" Alexander nodded, not sure he could articulate how drastically it would change his life. He rubbed the back of his neck, tension humming through his muscles. "Let's talk about tomorrow. The board wants me traveling to finalize the merger negotiations, but I can't leave Lily with the mother unaccounted for." Mara's lips pressed together. "In that case, might I suggest we push the flight another few days? The board won't be happy, but we can say you're handling critical family matters. Unless you prefer to bring Lily with you, but that might be more complicated, especially if her mother is here in the city." Alexander shook his head. "No, she needs stability right now, not to be dragged around the country for business meetings." He released a ragged breath. "Okay, let's postpone the trip. We can spin it as a short personal leave. In the meantime, keep the security detail around her, day and night." Mara affirmed with a nod. "Understood. I'll handle the communications discreetly, no direct references to Lily in any external statement." Before she left, Alexander rested a hand on her arm. "Mara, truly, thank you. I don't know how I'd manage this without you." She gave a brief, warm smile. "I'm here to help, sir. You know that." Then she was gone, leaving Alexander alone in the library. He closed his eyes for a moment, listening to the low hum of the ventilation system, the distant bustle of staff in the penthouse. Outside, the last vestiges of daylight faded, painting the clouds in shades of deep purple and crimson. He felt torn, an unfamiliar sensation for a man known to be decisive. On one hand, part of him couldn't shake the corporate mindset, thinking about the damage to his public image, the costly delays in the merger, the ripple effects on the empire he'd built. On the other, how could any of that compare to the unspoken plea in Lily's eyes or the dire urgency of finding her mother? Eventually, he headed to the hallway, half expecting to see Lily rummaging around in the grand living area, but her footsteps were nowhere to be heard. He checked her suite, tapping lightly on the door. No answer. Concern pricked at him. He tried the doorknob, stepping inside. The lights were on, the bed still neatly made, the new pajamas folded on the covers. But Lily wasn't there. A wave of alarm sliced through him. He spun back into the corridor. "Lily?" he called, voice echoing along the marble floors. No response. He strode toward the main living room, searching for any sign of her. "Lily!" Panic welled in his throat, sharpened by the memory of what Mara and Marcus had said about potential threats. Could someone have slipped past security? Could Lily have wandered off, searching for her mother on her own? He stormed through the penthouse, checking each room. Nothing. Staff, alerted by his tense tone, scattered to help. Mara approached, eyes wide. "Sir, the elevator security shows no unauthorized exits. She has to be somewhere inside." Alexander's heart pounded. He opened the door to his own master suite, lights flicking on automatically. The room was in typical order, immaculate bed, a polished desk, floor-to-ceiling windows, and then he spotted it, a slight figure curled on the large reading chair near the windows. He exhaled in relief. "Lily," he breathed, stepping closer. She looked up, face tear-streaked, hugging her stuffed toy so tightly her knuckles showed white. I got lost," she admitted in a shaky whisper. "I tried to find you, but all the hallways looked the same, and I started to panic." Alexander knelt by the chair, reaching out to place a hand on her arm. "Why didn't you call out? We would have come." She shrugged, tears slipping free. "I didn't want to cause more trouble. Everyone's so busy, and I'm just... She didn't finish, but her meaning was clear. A child caught in an unfamiliar world, unsure of her place. Alexander felt a sting in his chest. "Listen," he said softly, "you're not just anything. You're Lily, and there's no trouble in asking for help, okay? Never be afraid to let someone know you need them." She nodded, sniffling. He offered his hand and she grabbed it with surprising force. "Let's get you some dinner," he suggested. "We'll eat in the kitchen. Then I can show you around so you won't get lost again." A tentative smile curved her lips. "Okay." He helped her from the chair. Together they navigated the penthouse corridors. He pointed out notable doors, the difference between guest suites and staff quarters, where the lounge was, the library, the route to the living room. He explained that if she ever felt lost, she could press the intercom button on the wall to call staff. In the kitchen, a service cart awaited with covered plates, hot soup, grilled chicken, vegetables, and fresh bread. Clearly, Mara had orchestrated a simple yet comforting meal. Alexander guided Lily onto a stool at the marble island. They ate quietly, the tension of the day easing in the warm aroma of broth and the friendly glow of the kitchen lights. Halfway through her soup, Lily paused. Will Will you stay with me again tonight?" His chest squeezed. He recalled the previous night, how he'd checked on her at nearly 4 in the morning. "Yes," he said softly. "I'll be here." She relaxed, relief visible in her slight shoulders. They finished their meal, talking in low voices about inconsequential things, what cartoons she liked, how she'd once tried to bake cookies with her mother. Alexander gleaned bits of her past, endless moves, half-remembered addresses, a sense of constant evasion. At last, with dinner done, Lily stifled a yawn. She followed him back to her suite, where he waited as she changed into pajamas. Then he led her to the bed and turned on a small nightlight that cast soft stars across the ceiling. She clutched her stuffed toy under the covers, eyes heavy but still threaded with worry. Alexander lingered, hands in his pockets, uncertain. "I can stay until you fall asleep if you want," he offered gently. Her answer was a small nod, and she pulled the blanket up to her chin. So he sat on the edge of the bed, quietly humming a melody he barely recalled, something from his own childhood perhaps, or a half-forgotten tune from a memory he never thought would matter. Slowly, Lily's breathing evened out. Her eyelashes fluttered, then settled. He watched her sleep for a moment, pondering how a single day had rearranged his entire life. Tomorrow, the DNA results would come, possibly answering the biggest question of all. And soon after, they might locate her mother, if that bus station footage was truly her. If she was still safe, if all these puzzle pieces finally clicked. With a soft sigh, he rose from the bed, switched off the overhead light, and slipped into the corridor. The hush of the penthouse enveloped him. Tomorrow, everything could change, for better or for worse. He only hoped that fate would be kind, both to the frightened little girl asleep behind that door and to the woman who might have once pleaded for his help in a garden lit by gala lights. In the flickering shadows of the hall, Alexander stood motionless, grappling with a new kind of responsibility, a father's promise, untested and uncertain, that he would carry no matter the weight. Morning sunlight spilled into the penthouse, shimmering across the polished floors. Alexander stirred from a shallow sleep in his master suite. He had dozed off in the armchair near the window, unable or perhaps unwilling to climb into his own bed and shut out the swirling concerns. At some point, fatigue had won, and he drifted into restless dreams. Now, beams of daylight cut through the windows, and reality returned in a rush. Lily's mother was still missing, and by midday the DNA results would arrive, revealing once and for all if he truly was Lily's father. He rose, still in yesterday's clothes, and splashed cold water on his face in the ensuite bathroom. Staring at his reflection in the mirror, he recognized the traces of worry around his eyes. No press conference or corporate event had ever made him look this worn. He dried off, changed into a crisp new shirt, and headed toward the kitchen, determined to meet this day prepared, even if inside he felt anything but steady. As he walked, staff stepped aside respectfully. Their usual polite greetings seemed tinged with curiosity. Rumors about the little girl staying in the penthouse were running rampant among employees, though none dared voice them. Alexander paused in the hallway outside Lily's suite and knocked softly. To his relief, she opened the door almost immediately. She was already dressed in a simple green t-shirt and jeans, one of the outfits Mara had purchased. She held her stuffed toy by its ear, eyes puffy, suggesting she hadn't slept well either. "Morning," he said gently. "How are you holding up?" She shrugged, glancing at the floor. "Nervous, I guess." He nodded, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Let's get some breakfast," he offered. "Then we can see what the day brings." They made their way to the penthouse kitchen, where the cook had laid out a modest spread: scrambled eggs, fresh fruit, warm bread. Lily took a seat, trying to nibble on a slice of toast, though each bite seemed half-hearted. Alexander sipped coffee, trying to quell his own tension. Halfway through the meal, Mara slipped into the kitchen, tablet in hand. "Sir?" she said, her voice hushed. "Natalie Cho just arrived with important news. She's in your private study." Alexander's pulse quickened. He looked at Lily, who met his gaze with immediate understanding. "Should I come with you?" she asked, setting down her toast. He hesitated. If the news involved details of her mother's situation, or something harrowing, maybe Lily shouldn't hear it all at once, but she had insisted on not being left in the dark. Yes, he decided. Let's go. They followed Mara down a short corridor into Alexander's private study, a warm space lined with books and a commanding view of the city. Natalie Cho stood near the desk, expression focused. She greeted Lily with a quick smile, but wasted no time addressing Alexander. "I'm sorry for the early visit," she said, "but I have 2 updates. First, my team found a neighbor from Lily's last known apartment. She confirms she once saw Lily's mother wearing a heart-shaped necklace, a detail that lines up with Lily's story. The neighbor claims Lily's mom used a name starting with Isa, or Isabel, which strongly suggests Isabel Carter could be real." Alexander nodded. "That's something. Did the neighbor know where she went, or why she left?" Cho sighed. "No. She said Lily's mom seemed frightened, always checking over her shoulder. Then one day, they were just gone." The neighbor recalls overhearing a tense phone call mentioning the word papers, again consistent with Lily's memory. Lily shifted her weight. "Mom said those papers could help us. She never told me how." Cho crouched gently to Lily's level. "You're being very brave. Thank you for sharing what you remember." Then she straightened, eyes turning serious as she met Alexander's gaze. "The second update involves your DNA test. I reached out to the lab to confirm their timeline. They should have results within the next 2 or 3 hours. Lily's hands tightened around her stuffed toy. Alexander felt his own heart pound at the significance of that. "All right, we'll wait," he said, voice taut. "In the meantime, any progress on that bus station lead?" A flicker of disappointment crossed Cho's features. "We've checked every camera around the station. The footage is either angled away or compromised by technical issues. It's as if she vanished." She paused. "But we're not giving up. If your security team can dig deeper, maybe cross-reference rideshare data, we could find a trace." Before Alexander could answer, Lily stepped forward, voice shaking. "When we find her, do you think she'll be okay? Or do you think something bad happened?" The question hung in the air. Cho exchanged a knowing glance with Alexander. "We won't stop until we find her," the investigator repeated gently. "That's all I can promise." Lily swallowed hard, nodding. Alexander placed a hand on her shoulder. "Thank you, Cho," he said. "Keep me informed." She took her leave, and Alexander guided Lily toward a couch by the study's wide windows. They settled into the cushions, the city shimmering outside like a mirage of normalcy. "We'll figure it out," he said softly. "And today, we'll have an answer about us." Her eyes darted up. What if it's negative? If you're not my dad?" Alexander hesitated, breathing through a wave of conflicting emotions. "Then I'll still help you," he said simply. "I won't leave you to face this alone." A tiny spark of relief flickered in her gaze, though her expression remained pained. "Thank you." Time crawled. They tried to occupy themselves. Lily flipped through TV channels in the penthouse lounge, but every cartoon felt hollow without her mother safe. Alexander fielded calls, balancing the demands of anxious board members with the discreet updates from his investigative team. But every half hour, he found himself checking the clock, waiting for the lab results that would decide so much. Finally, around midday, Mara entered the lounge, her face solemn. "Sir, the courier is here." Alexander rose at once. Lily did too, hugging the stuffed toy with both arms. Together they followed Mara to the entrance hallway, where a plain-clothed courier held a sealed envelope. He handed it over, verified by security ID. "Time-sensitive lab results, sir," the courier said quietly. "Thank you." Alexander signed the receipt. The courier left, and Alexander gazed at the envelope as if it were a live wire. He glanced at Lily. Her breathing looked shallow, eyes locked on the envelope. Mara silently stepped back, giving them space. Alexander opened the envelope carefully. His mind buzzed with 1,000 scenarios. This could confirm everything Lily believed, or it could shatter her hopes. He tugged out a folded sheet, scanning the typed lines that summarized a paternity analysis. Lily let out a tiny, involuntary whimper, knuckles whitening as she gripped her toy. He read the final, decisive paragraph. His breath caught. "Positive," he whispered, meeting Lily's eyes. "It's positive. Lily, I'm your father." A wave of emotion washed across Lily's face. Relief, disbelief, happiness, tears. She dropped the toy and threw her arms around his waist. Alexander, feeling his own throat tighten, wrapped her in a gentle hug. He could barely register the astonishment swirling in him, overshadowed by the sheer fact that he was indeed this child's father. All the rational corporate part of his brain reeled at the enormity of that word, father. But his arms tightened around Lily, cherishing the bond that now was indisputable. Mara watched from a short distance, tears brimming in her own eyes. She offered a tissue from her pocket, which Lily took, wiping her face. Then Lily looked up, voice trembling. "So it's real. You really are my dad." He nodded, bending to meet her gaze. "Yes," he murmured. "I'm so sorry I didn't know. But now that I do, I promise, I'll do everything to protect you and to find your mom." Lily pressed her face against his chest again, emotion overwhelming her. He stroked her hair gently, trying to steady his own heartbeat. A swirl of conflicting feelings churned inside him. Guilt for not being there from the start. Wonder that Lily had found her way to him anyway. Fear that they still had to save her mother from whatever threat loomed. After a few moments, Mara cleared her throat softly. "Sir, I've just informed Ms. Cho. She wants to speak with you right away. Something about a new angle on the bus station footage. She said it might be urgent." Alexander nodded, guiding Lily toward the study. "Let's go," he said, voice firm. The paternal sense of responsibility burned brighter now, fueling his resolve. They found Natalie Cho in a quiet side office, huddled over a laptop. She looked up as Alexander, Mara, and Lily entered. "I just heard the news," she said softly. "Congratulations, Dad." She smiled kindly at Lily before turning serious. "Now that we know for sure, this changes everything about the search for Lily's mother. We can push official channels faster for a missing person alert related to your family." Alexander set a hand on Lily's back. "What's the new angle you mentioned?" Cho spun the laptop around. "One of my contacts cross-referenced footage from a private security camera near the bus station. It's not part of the city's grid, belongs to a small electronics store. We've got partial footage of a woman in a green jacket at around the same time Lily's mother vanished." Lily craned her neck to see. The grainy clip showed a woman stepping off the curb, scanning the street, then jogging out of frame. Her face was partially visible. Though the quality was poor, the shape of her jaw and the dark hair pulled into a low ponytail matched the earlier bus station clip. Cho tapped a key, pausing the feed. "Here's the issue. She's glancing behind her like she's worried she's being followed. Then, about 10 seconds later, a dark SUV pulls up. This store camera only caught the edge of the vehicle. No plates visible." Alexander's jaw set. "They took her." Cho sighed. "We can't see that. The camera is angled away. We just see the SUV swerve to the curb, the passenger door open, and a man step out. It's possible she fled or got forced in. Unclear. But the SUV speeds off seconds later." Lily pressed closer to the laptop, eyes wide with dread. "That has to be them, the people who are after her," she said, voice trembling. They took her, didn't they? Alexander's heart pounded. Can we trace that SUV? I'm trying. It's black, tinted windows, no plate in view. Typical untraceable approach. We might find more cameras further down that street, but so far no luck. Still, it's new intel. She made it to that spot, alive, before something happened. Tension radiated from Lily's small frame. She tugged on Alexander's sleeve, tears threatening. They have her, she whispered. Dad, what do we do? They have her. He didn't hesitate, sliding an arm around her for comfort. We'll find them. We'll find her. Then to Cho, he said grimly, I'll put every resource behind this. Tell me what you need. Cho listed tasks, contacting city traffic control for more camera angles, pressing local law enforcement to expand the missing person search, analyzing any possible correlation to known criminals who used black SUVs. Alexander gave immediate approval, telling Mara to coordinate. Lily watched him, face streaked with a mix of fear and hope. Once they finished, Lily sank onto a nearby chair, clutching her stuffed toy so tightly the seams might burst. Alexander crouched beside her. We have a lead, he said, voice calm but steely with determination. It's not everything, but it's more than we had. We'll keep pushing until we know where that SUV went. She nodded, tears slipping from the corners of her eyes. Thank you, she managed, trembling. Thank you for believing me, for being my dad. The quiet sincerity in her words squeezed his heart. I'm sorry I wasn't there before, he murmured, voice rough with regret. But I'm here now, and I won't stop. They returned to the penthouse lounge, Lily's hand grasped firmly in Alexander's. The place was a flurry of activity, security staff conferring with communications specialists, phones ringing. Alexander ordered coffee for himself and a warm tea for Lily, though she barely touched it. Mara approached with a solemn expression. Sir, the press has caught wind of your cancelled travel and the rumor of a child in the penthouse. They're asking questions, staking out the building. We'll have to manage that very carefully. Lily looked panicked. Alexander smoothed her hair reassuringly. Mara, issue a statement that I'm dealing with a confirmed family matter, no further details. If they pry, refer them to my office. Keep Lily out of the spotlight. Mara nodded, stepping away to handle calls. Lily swallowed. Are they going to put me in the news? Alexander shook his head, fierce protectiveness flaring. Not if I can help it. This is your life. You're not some story for the tabloids. She relaxed slightly. Then she glanced around the busy lounge at the urgent phone calls and typed messages. It's all happening so fast, she whispered. He knelt beside her chair. Lily, I know this is overwhelming, but you've already been so brave. We have a direction. Whoever took your mom used that SUV. We'll find them. She nodded, laying her head on his shoulder momentarily. The small gesture of trust seared his heart again. He'd never imagined fatherhood like this, a sudden crash of responsibility and emotion. Yet he couldn't deny the primal satisfaction of protecting a child who needed him. A phone beeped on the table near them, the screen flashing a name, Marcus Rowan. Alexander quickly answered, Lily leaning close enough to hear. Yes, Marcus? The security chief's voice crackled. Sir, we found a partial camera feed 2 blocks away from the electronics store. It might show the black SUV turning onto a side street. Then it disappears. But we have an address or 2 we can check. My men are heading out right now to investigate. Alexander's heart jumped. Good. Keep me updated, every minute. He hung up, looking at Lily. They might have found a clue to where the SUV went. Her face lit with cautious hope. She exhaled shakily. Maybe we're close. Maybe Mom's not too far. He nodded. Let's believe that. And no matter what they find, I'll make sure we keep you safe, Lily. In the background, the city noise and the ring of phones persisted, like a drumbeat underscoring the intensifying search. Lily's mother was out there, possibly in danger, but they were closer now, piece by piece. With the paternity test confirmed, Alexander felt a renewed fire in his chest. This was his daughter's mother. He had to rescue her, reunite them, or he'd never forgive himself. Standing in the swirl of staff and screens, father and child exchanged a look filled with unspoken resolve. Even as tension thrummed like a live wire, a new certainty bound them together. They were family. And no matter what enemy lurked behind that vanished SUV or what secrets lay in those papers Lily's mother guarded, Alexander Pierce would stand firm. No longer the lone, unstoppable mogul, but a father fighting for the most vital connection he'd ever known. A hush fell across the penthouse lounge as Alexander ended yet another call with his security chief, Marcus Rowan. He exhaled slowly, steadying himself against the nearest marble column. Lily stood by his side, clutching her stuffed toy, eyes fixed on him. Though she hardly understood the intricacies of corporate negotiations and hush-hush security operations, she sensed the gravity in the air. "They've tracked the black SUV's trail to a string of side streets," Alexander said, turning to Lily in a low voice. "Marcus and his men are sweeping the area now. It's near the city's old industrial zone, so it might take time to check every abandoned building." Lily's knuckles whitened around the stuffed toy. "I hope they find Mom soon," she whispered. "All this waiting is—" He placed a hand on her shoulder. "I know. Waiting is the worst part, but at least we have a direction now." Throughout the day, tension had mounted, fueled by the new footage. The partial sighting of that dark SUV, the likely key to Lily's mother's disappearance, became the central focus of Alexander's entire security apparatus. Meanwhile, the media outside smelled blood, clamoring for statements on who the secret child might be. True to Alexander's instructions, Mara had kept Lily out of the public eye. Inside the lounge, staff hovered at the periphery with phones and laptops, coordinating calls or scanning local news. One by one they slipped out, leaving father and daughter momentarily alone in the hushed elegance of the room. Lily sank onto a plush armchair, brows furrowed. "Dad, if they do find her, what if she's hurt?" The question came out tentative, her gaze trembling with unspoken fears. Alexander knelt beside her, his hand lightly covering hers. "No matter what condition she's in," he said quietly, "we'll get her medical help. We'll protect her. We'll do everything in our power." She nodded, swallowing. Her young features carried a weight that no child should bear. "And if the bad people have her," she whispered, "maybe they want something from you. Something about these papers. I heard Mom say that she had to show them to the right person. She said they proved something big." Alexander felt an icy coil of dread in his gut. A black SUV, a missing mother, references to dangerous documents. He had enough experience in high-stakes corporate dealings to know how quickly something big could turn lethal. "I suspect it's evidence that threatens someone powerful," he said, voice grim. "Maybe tied to a hidden scandal, money laundering, or worse. If your mom tried to bring me this information years ago but was turned away, or if I was too distracted to notice, then she might have ended up on her own." Lily's gaze flicked to him. "But you won't let her down now, right?" He gently squeezed her hand. "Never again," he murmured. "We'll figure out the truth, and we'll make sure your mom is safe." A knock at the door interrupted them. Mara slipped in, pressing a phone to her chest. "Sir, you'll want to take this. It's Marcus." Alexander straightened. "Put him through." Mara handed over the phone, and Alexander answered quickly. "Marcus?" "Sir." Marcus's voice crackled over the line. "We've located a vehicle matching the SUV's description in an abandoned parking garage near the riverfront in the old industrial area. The license plates are missing, but the paint color and make line up. We're running the VIN number to confirm. No sign of the driver or any occupants." Alexander's pulse leaped. "What about Lily's mother?" "Not here," Marcus answered, regret edging his tone. But we found evidence someone left in a hurry. A half-eaten takeout meal, a cigarette still in the ashtray. We're expanding the search to nearby warehouses. My men spotted fresh tire tracks leading toward a run-down complex about a block away. We suspect that's where they went. "I'm on my way," Alexander said immediately, adrenaline surging. Mara's head snapped up. Lily, too, jerked to attention. "But, sir," Marcus protested, "it might be dangerous. We can handle this." "I appreciate your concern," Alexander cut in, voice firm. "But this is Lily's mother we're talking about. I'll coordinate with you on site. I'm bringing a small security detail." He ended the call, ignoring the flicker of alarm in Mara's eyes. "Sir, you can't just walk into a potential hostage situation," Mara said, tone urgent. "There are trained professionals." Alexander shot her a look that was all steel. "Professionals who work for me. I'm not letting them handle this alone. Besides, if the kidnappers do want something from me personally, my presence might help negotiate, or at least keep Lily's mother safe until we can intervene." Lily rose, panic rippling through her voice. "Dad, I want to come." He hesitated, feeling her desperation. "No, I'm sorry, Lily, but it's too risky. Let me and my security team handle this." She opened her mouth to argue, tears forming, but a quiet resolve settled in her eyes. "You have to bring her back," she whispered. "I'll wait here with Mara." Her hands trembled as she clasped the stuffed toy. "Promise, you'll be careful?" His heart clenched. "I promise." Leaning down, he pressed a swift kiss to her forehead, an instinct that surprised even him. "Stay with Mara. She'll keep you safe." Mara guided Lily aside, offering a reassuring arm around her shoulders. Alexander strode from the lounge, summoning 2 of his best private security operatives. They headed to the elevator that would lead them to the building's parking garage. In the reflection of the polished elevator doors, Alexander noted the tension etched across his face. The man who rarely left negotiations without total control was now stepping into a scenario with no script, no guaranteed outcome. But he had to do it. Lily's mother was in danger, and it was his duty to fix this. The city blurred by as Alexander's armored SUV wove through traffic. His personal driver expertly maneuvered between lanes, lights flashing to warn other cars aside. On either side of Alexander sat security men scanning the roads for potential threats. The atmosphere inside the vehicle was taut, thick with unspoken possibilities. A confrontation, a rescue, perhaps worse. At last, they arrived at the old industrial zone. Rows of abandoned factories and decrepit warehouses loomed, windows shattered, walls covered in faded graffiti. The river sparkled dully beyond a rusted chain-link fence. The roads here were cracked and silent, perfect for illegal activities away from prying eyes. Marcus waited near an unmarked black SUV, flanked by half a dozen armed men in discreet clothing. They greeted Alexander with tense nods. "Sir," Marcus said, "the vehicle we found is inside that half-collapsed parking structure." He pointed to a sagging concrete edifice with broken windows. "No sign of occupants, but we followed tracks to a big warehouse just down the block. One of my scouts saw faint light inside, possibly from flashlights or a lantern." Alexander surveyed the area, bracing himself. "Any sign of guards or lookouts?" Marcus shook his head. "Not yet. But it's a large building, multiple entrances. We have to be careful." He handed Alexander a bulletproof vest. "You should wear this. Let us take point." Alexander didn't argue, slipping the vest on. Normally he'd bark orders from a safe vantage, but personal stakes changed everything. He turned to Marcus, voice steady. "We approach quietly. If Lily's mother is inside, we need to ensure her safety first. No gunfire unless absolutely necessary." Marcus nodded. "Yes, sir. My men know the protocol. We also have non-lethal equipment, stun devices, tear gas, if it helps avoid a lethal confrontation." With that, they advanced in formation. The sun hung low over the horizon, casting long shadows across the cracked pavement. They moved with deliberate speed down a deserted side street lined by the decaying shells of old industrial offices. A chain-link fence blocked part of the route, but Marcus's men snipped through it, careful not to make too much noise. Soon they stood before a hulking warehouse. Its doors were rusted shut, large windows mostly shattered. Weeds sprouted along the foundation. From a high broken window, Alexander glimpsed a faint flicker, evidence that someone or something inhabited the gloom within. Marcus signaled, and a pair of security agents circled around back. Another team waited for the order to breach. Alexander's pulse thundered in his ears. For a fleeting moment he pictured Lily, safe in the penthouse, waiting anxiously for news. The thought steeled his resolve. The front entrance was sealed with a chain and padlock. One of Marcus's men produced bolt cutters, severing the chain with a muffled clank. They eased the door open, steps quiet as they filed into darkness. Motes of dust drifted in the feeble light from overhead windows. The space smelled of rust and damp concrete. Inside, stacked crates and rusted machinery formed a labyrinth. The team advanced slowly, flashlights cutting through the gloom. Alexander caught a distant echo, a voice, or maybe the shuffle of feet. He raised a hand, motioning for caution. They crept around a corner, weaving between the towering shapes of old metal presses. At last, they heard it clearly. Two voices, one low and threatening, the other distinctly female. The woman's voice cracked with desperation. Alexander's chest clenched. Lily's mother? Marcus's men took positions behind a cluster of crates, weapons raised but not brandished. Alexander edged closer, heart pounding. Peering through a gap in the stacked crates, he saw the scene. A small clearing in the center of the warehouse, lit by a single battery-powered lantern. 3 men stood there. One of them, stocky with a shaved head, pointed a handgun at a woman kneeling on the ground. She wore a torn green jacket, hair disheveled. A heart-shaped necklace glinted faintly at her throat. Alexander's stomach lurched. That had to be Lily's mother. The man with the gun snarled, "Enough stalling! Where are the documents?" She coughed, clutching her side. I told you," she rasped, voice trembling. "They're hidden. You'll never find them. Let me go." One of the other men, a lanky figure in dark clothes, barked a laugh. "We know you were trying to reach Pierce. Too bad your kid never made it to him." Alexander bit back a surge of rage. Lily had indeed made it to him, and now he was here. He had to stay controlled. He glanced at Marcus, who signaled for a stealth approach. They needed to free Lily's mother before these men took her away or harmed her. But how to do it without setting off a violent confrontation? The stocky man snapped, "Don't lie! You were at the tower. We have proof. Where'd you stash the papers? You think Pierce will save you? Ha!" He took a menacing step, gun aimed at her head. Alexander's blood turned to fire. He gestured a plan to Marcus in quick, silent motions. Half the team would circle behind the men, the other half create a diversion from the front. Alexander readied himself to step forward once the kidnappers' focus was split. They had to do this carefully, or Lily's mother might get shot before they could intervene. Marcus nodded, sending 2 agents slinking around an adjacent aisle. Alexander felt every beat of his heart in his throat. Just a few more seconds. Suddenly the lanky man whirled, alerted by a faint scuff of movement from the hidden agents. "Who's there?" he hissed, raising a gun. The group froze, tension crackling in the shadows. Alexander's mind raced. If the kidnappers opened fire, Lily's mother would be caught in the crossfire. She was on her knees, panting, face pinched with pain. He had to do something. Drawing a deep breath, he stepped from behind the crates, hands raised in a show of empty palms. His security detail tensed, but Alexander emerged before they could pull him back. "Looking for me?" he called, voice strong and unwavering, though adrenaline surged through every nerve. The 3 kidnappers whipped their guns around, surprise flashing on their faces. Lily's mother let out a choked gasp, eyes going wide at the sight of Alexander. Recognition sparked. This was the man she'd spent years trying to reach, the father of her child. "Pierce! spat the stocky man, fury contorting his features. He stepped toward Alexander. So the rumors were true? You do care enough to come yourself. Alexander forced a calm expression, though fear for Lily's mother tore at him. You have someone who doesn't belong to you, he said icily. Let her go, and I might consider hearing you out. You think you can bargain with us? The lanky man sneered, weapon aimed at Alexander's chest. We know she has documents that incriminate powerful people. Maybe you're one of them. We want them. Alexander inched forward, staying mindful of the men's trembling triggers. I don't know anything about documents, he lied smoothly. All I know is you're threatening an innocent woman. That ends now. A tense stalemate. The men exchanged glances, uncertain. For them, the plan might have been to force her into revealing the document's location. They hadn't counted on the arrival of Alexander Pierce, flanked by a professional security team. The vantage points behind crates and machines practically glowed with hidden silhouettes. Marcus's men, ready to strike. The stocky man let out a sharp laugh. You have no clue, do you, Pierce? Her precious child was your ticket to the truth, but that brat never even... At that moment, a flashbang device clattered to the floor behind them, thrown by one of Marcus's agents. The kidnappers spun, startled. Alexander reflexively covered his ears. A brilliant flash filled the air, accompanied by a deafening bang that rattled the decrepit warehouse walls. Light spots dancing in his vision, Alexander dove forward. Marcus's men surged in from multiple angles, shouts echoing in the chaos. The kidnappers stumbled, disoriented by the flashbang. One fired blindly, the bullet ricocheting off a crate. Another dropped his weapon, clutching his eyes. In the confusion, Alexander slid across the concrete to Lily's mother. She was lying flat, shielding her head. He grasped her arm gently. We're getting you out of here, he hissed. She blinked up at him, pain in her eyes, but also a spark of recognition, hope. Gunshots barked again. Marcus's team engaged the kidnappers, forcing them to surrender or flee. Alexander pulled Lily's mother behind a half-collapsed pillar, heart pounding. Sirens sounded in the distance. Marcus must have quietly summoned the police as backup. The kidnappers realized they were surrounded. The stocky man, bleeding from a graze, tried to scramble for cover. Then a final shot rang out from one of Marcus's agents. The man's weapon spun across the floor. Panting, he slumped, pinned by a shot to his leg, howling in pain. The others were quickly subdued, guns kicked away. The fight ended almost as fast as it began, the kidnappers moaning or cursing on the ground. Alexander exhaled hard, adrenaline roaring in his ears. He turned to Lily's mother, scanning her for injuries. Her green jacket was torn, a cut bled along her temple, and she clutched her ribs in pain. But she was alive. "Can you stand?" he asked, voice gentle. She coughed, nodding weakly. I think so," she managed, letting him help her up. Then her gaze fixed on his face, tears threatening. "You, Alexander Pierce, Lily's father, I wasn't sure you'd ever believe me." He swallowed against a tightness in his throat. "I should have listened years ago," he murmured, supporting her weight. "But I'm here now. Lily's safe, waiting for you." Her tears overflowed. "Lily." "Oh, thank God," she whispered, clinging to him. Marcus appeared, scanning the area for any remaining threats. "Sir, we have them in custody. Are you two all right?" Alexander nodded, one arm around Lily's mother's shoulders. "Yes. Let's get her to a hospital." Then to the trembling woman at his side. "We'll go right away. We need to make sure you're okay." She nodded, sobs catching in her throat. "I'm so sorry about everything. If I'd managed to contact you, if I'd forced the issue, none of this—" "Shh," Alexander soothed, guiding her away from the chaos. "Let's get you safe. That's all that matters." Outside, flashing blue and red lights filled the twilight. Police vehicles lined the deserted street. Medics rushed forward with a stretcher. Lily's mother resisted it initially, wanting to walk, but pain lanced through her ribs, and she conceded to the paramedics. Alexander slid into the ambulance with her, ignoring the protests of staff who insisted he should follow in his own secure car. He texted Mara, "Found Lily's mom. Heading to hospital. Prepare everything." Then, as the ambulance doors slammed shut, siren wailing, he grasped the battered woman's hand. "Your daughter's waiting," he promised, voice calm despite his own shaking adrenaline. "Just hold on a bit longer." She gazed at him through tired, tear-filled eyes. "How is she? She must be so scared." He managed a small smile. "She's strong. She's been looking for you this whole time, and she found me, too." A surge of emotion threatened to spill over, but he kept steady. "We did a DNA test. Lily was right. She's my daughter." A look of profound relief and sorrow mingled in her expression. I wanted to tell you years ago," she whispered, tears escaping. "But there were threats. People who wanted me to vanish, who wanted me to keep quiet. I was terrified they'd hurt Lily if I stayed near you." Alexander clasped her hand more tightly. "No one will hurt either of you again. I swear." Outside, the ambulance roared down a deserted stretch of highway. City lights blurred past, reminiscent of that first frantic night Lily appeared on the helipad. But now, the mother was safe, rescued from the criminals who'd kidnapped her. The final steps, though, lay ahead, unraveling the shadowy plot that forced her to run, ensuring Lily's mother could truly be free. And if Alexander had any say, forging the family that Lily had always deserved. He closed his eyes, relief and fear swirling in equal measure. In the seat across from him, a paramedic checked Lily's mother's vital signs. The beep of the heart monitor pounded in time with Alexander's own racing pulse. He pictured Lily waiting in the penthouse, hope and anxiety written across her face. Soon he would bring her mother home. Soon they could begin to heal. But as the siren wailed and the city lights stretched on, Alexander Pierce knew their ordeal wasn't truly over. The men who had orchestrated this kidnapping might be just foot soldiers. The documents Lily's mother safeguarded contained secrets potent enough to topple something big, something that might come back to haunt them unless exposed. For now, though, he focused on the single victory of this night: Lily's mother, alive and free from her captors. He only prayed it would be enough to keep them all safe in the days ahead. The ambulance careened through late evening traffic, weaving around civilian vehicles that pulled aside for its screaming siren. Inside, Alexander kept a firm but gentle hold on Lily's mother's hand. Her face was taut with pain. An oxygen mask rested over her mouth and nose, and the paramedics carefully checked her vitals. In the blue flashing interior lights, Alexander caught glimpses of the heart-shaped necklace still clinging to her neck, the chain broken but stubbornly hanging on. "Try to stay calm," Alexander murmured, leaning in so she could hear him despite the siren's wail. "We're almost at the hospital." Her eyes flicked open, glazed with pain. "Tell Lily I'm okay," she managed, voice rasping. "Don't let her be scared." He nodded, voice steady. "She's in my penthouse, safe. She's been incredibly brave, and she never stopped believing we'd find you." Through the ambulance's back window, city lights smeared into neon blurs. Alexander found himself quietly amazed at how drastically life had changed within days. He wasn't just a corporate magnate looking after a frightened child. He was, in fact, a father, and the woman lying before him, a virtual stranger until Lily's arrival, was now profoundly linked to him. The swirl of it all nearly overwhelmed him, but he kept his emotions in check, focusing on the immediate crisis. At last, the ambulance jolted to a halt outside a private hospital. The doors swung open, and a team of medical staff whisked Lily's mother onto a gurney, rushing her inside. Alexander followed, ignoring the protests of his own security detail. He'd promised Lily he would protect her mother, and nothing short of that was acceptable. The emergency department bustled under harsh fluorescent lights. Doctors and nurses guided Lily's mother into a curtained exam bay. One doctor, A tall woman with a calm demeanor turned to Alexander. "Are you family?" she asked briskly. He didn't hesitate. "Yes, I'm—" He caught himself swirling with realization. "I'm the father of her child." Understanding flickered across the doctor's face. "She's in rough shape, possible cracked rib, some bruising, mild dehydration. We'll need x-rays. You can stay nearby, but give the team space to work." Alexander stepped aside, letting the staff cluster around the bed. He hovered at the edge of the curtain, arms folded, keeping watch. Tension radiated through his body at the sight of her injuries. She was battered, but alive. He braced himself against a wave of guilt for not acting sooner, for not recalling her existence from that old gala or the warnings Lily's mother must have tried to share. But regret wouldn't help now. Only action would. Minutes stretched into an hour as the doctors stitched a gash on her temple, set up an IV, and ordered scans. Finally, the initial rush settled. The doctor approached Alexander. "She's stable," she said. "We'll admit her for further observation, but her injuries aren't life-threatening. A rib fracture and contusions plus shock and mild malnourishment. She needs rest and care, but she'll recover." Relief flooded through him, loosening the tight grip on his chest. "Thank you, doctor. Can I see her?" The doctor nodded. "Briefly, she needs to stay calm. No stress. Are there external threats?" She seemed fearful. Alexander's gaze hardened. "Yes, she was held by criminals. I'll arrange private security for her room." The doctor's eyes widened in professional concern. "Understood. Just keep the presence discreet. We don't want to alarm other patients." When Alexander stepped into the curtained space, Lily's mother was lying back on the bed, an IV taped to her arm. Her bruises were more visible now, darkening across her cheek. But her eyes met Alexander's with a flicker of relief. "Isabel Carter," she said softly, as though reading his unspoken question. That's the name I used. My real name, anyway, though I've gone by others when I had to hide." She gave him a faint, wry smile. "Guess you finally tracked me down." Alexander's throat constricted. "I'm sorry," he said, voice hoarse. If I'd listened to you at that gala years ago." She shook her head, tears forming. "They threatened me, Alexander. Threatened Lily. I didn't dare put you in the middle without proof. And by the time I had the documents, the danger was too great to approach you openly. I tried once, and everything fell apart." He stepped closer, gently setting a hand over hers on the bed. "You're safe now," he murmured. "Lily's safe. We'll figure out the rest." At the mention of Lily, Isabel's eyes lit with desperate longing. "I need to see her, please." Alexander nodded. "As soon as the doctors say you're stable enough, I'll bring her here, or we can have you moved to a private suite in my building with full medical support, wherever you feel safest." Her fingers tightened over his. "Your building," she echoed, a ghost of a smile forming. "I always told Lily you were powerful, that if we could just reach you." He swallowed hard, leaning in. "We have a lifetime to fill in the gaps," he said softly. "For now, rest. The criminals who held you are in custody. My security team turned them over to the police. We've discovered they wanted your documents, evidence that threatens them or their employers." Her features darkened, recalling the pain. They're part of a bigger network. The ones I first stumbled upon were middlemen, but behind them, I suspect a high-ranking politician or a corporate figure with enough influence to bury truths." Her voice cracked with urgency. "Those papers, they expose corruption, money laundering, missing public funds. Lily and I never stayed anywhere long. I was hunted for what I knew." Alexander felt a chill. The scenario was painfully plausible. Over the years, he'd encountered cunning corporate sabotage, but this was a new level. "Where are the papers now?" he asked quietly. "Are they safe?" She closed her eyes. "Yes, I hid them. They're encrypted digital files, plus some physical documents in a safe deposit box under a false name. They think I gave everything to you, but I couldn't risk it without verifying you'd help." "I will help," he said, unwavering. "We'll bring the evidence to the authorities, blow this wide open. They can't threaten you if the information is public." A tear slipped down her cheek. That's all I ever wanted, to protect Lily and make sure these monsters couldn't harm anyone else. Her lips trembled. She was so little when this all started. I couldn't let them use her as leverage. Alexander's heart wrenched. He stroked her knuckles with his thumb in a gesture that felt oddly intimate despite their complicated history. "You're not alone anymore, Isabel. We'll stand together." She nodded, relief mingling with exhaustion on her face. Then she sighed, eyes drifting shut. A nurse bustled in, adjusting monitors. Alexander stepped back to let them work, the enormity of the situation settling over him. Not only did he have to guard Lily and Isabel, but now he possessed knowledge of a deeper conspiracy, a network that wouldn't hesitate to resort to violence if threatened. Exiting the curtained area, he made a quick call to Mara, instructing her to tighten penthouse security and prepare a safe place for Isabel to recover once the doctors gave clearance. Then, with the hospital's permission, he allowed paramedics to move her to a secure private room under round-the-clock guard. The shift took an hour, during which Alexander hovered. He glanced out the hospital's large windows, phone buzzing with messages from his corporate staff. The world outside carried on with daily business, share prices, board demands, but none of that overshadowed the new reality forging his path. By the time Isabel was settled in a private, well-guarded hospital suite, it was nearly midnight. Alexander arranged for a guard detail in the hallway, verifying every ID that passed through. Satisfied she was safe, he texted Lily an update. "Your mom is stable and resting. I'll be home soon. Sleep if you can, or stay awake. I'll see you right away." After he concluded final security measures, he slipped out of the hospital and into his waiting car. His personal driver, an older man with a quiet, unflappable demeanor, cast him a respectful nod. Alexander sank into the back seat, running a hand through his hair. Exhaustion weighed on him, but a new warmth coursed through his veins. Lily's mother was alive. The kidnappers had failed. City lights sped by during the ride. He stared at the shifting glow, head swirling with next steps. They had to recover the evidence, expose the criminals behind this. He tapped a note in his phone, scheduling an urgent meeting with a trusted federal contact for the next day. If the evidence was as damning as Isabel indicated, he'd need to ensure a bulletproof chain of custody and immediate media coverage. The only way to neutralize the threat was to drag it into the open, so there was nothing left for them to hide or blackmail. At last, the SUV pulled into the private parking garage beneath Pierce Global Tower. Alexander strode to the penthouse elevator. When the doors opened into the grand foyer, Mara and Lily stood waiting. Lily's face was pale with worry. The instant she saw Alexander, she ran, throwing her arms around him. "You found her?" she breathed, relief saturating her voice. "Is she okay?" He kneeled, returning her hug. "She's in the hospital, but she's going to be fine." He pulled back, meeting her gaze. "She can't wait to see you." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," she whispered, voice shaking. "Thank you for saving her." His own throat felt tight. He brushed a stray strand of hair from her face. "I promised I would, and you saved her too, Lily, by finding me in the first place." She sniffled, turning her face into his shirt. Mara looked on, blinking back tears of her own. Then, collecting herself, Mara cleared her throat. "Sir, it's nearly 1 a.m. Would you like me to arrange for Lily to see her mother first thing tomorrow?" "Yes," Alexander answered, standing and guiding Lily gently toward the lounge. "But early. I don't want them apart a minute longer than necessary." "Understood." Mara tapped her tablet, making a note. "Also, the police want your statement regarding the warehouse. I've scheduled them to come here mid-morning so Lily doesn't have to go into the station, if that's acceptable." Alexander nodded, exhaling. Yes, thank you. He slipped an arm around Lily's shoulders as they walked. Her small weight against his side felt both fragile and profoundly anchoring. They entered the lounge where a staff member had laid out a tray with tea and sandwiches. Lily, though exhausted, managed a few sips of juice. With each minute, her tension seemed to ease, knowing her mother was alive and safe. Finally, Alexander looked down. "It's late. You should sleep," he said softly, brushing a hand over her hair. I want to wait up, in case you hear something new," she said, stifling a yawn. He offered a gentle smile, though his own exhaustion pulled at him. "Sweetheart, you need rest. I promise, if there's any big news, I'll wake you." The endearment "sweetheart" slipped out without forethought, but Lily didn't seem to mind. She simply nodded, yawning again. Mara approached, concern on her face. "Sir, I can show Lily to her suite." Alexander held up a hand. "I'll take her," he said quietly. "Thank you, Mara, for everything." Mara dipped her head in acknowledgement and left them alone. Father and daughter made their way through the silent corridors, the penthouse lights dimmed for the night. At Lily's suite, Alexander pulled back the covers on her bed. She climbed in, hugging her stuffed toy close. Her eyes were drooping, though relief still shone in them. "Dad," she murmured, "Mom said you were important. She never gave up on you." She paused as if trying to form the right words. "I'm so glad I found you." Emotion thickened Alexander's voice. "Me too," he said, tucking the blanket around her shoulders. "I'm sorry for all the times I wasn't there. I won't fail you again." Her lips curved in a small, sleepy smile. "You didn't fail me," she whispered. "Not this time." She closed her eyes, drifting off almost instantly. Alexander stood by the bed for a long minute, listening to the soft hum of the penthouse's climate system. Memories of the day, of the swirling dust in the warehouse, the ring of gunfire, the sight of Isabel battered on the floor, flickered in his mind. Relief mixed with worry about what was yet to come. Danger still lurked. The criminals might be behind bars, but the puppet masters pulling the strings were still at large. At last, he stepped into the hallway, carefully shutting Lily's door. He paused, pressing his palms against the cool wood, as though he could transmit reassurance through it. Then he turned toward his own suite, shoulders weighed by the knowledge that tomorrow would bring new battles. Doctors, police statements, retrieving the hidden documents, protecting Lily and Isabel from further threats. And yet, for the first time in years, a sense of purpose, one more visceral than any corporate ambition, burned in his chest. He was Lily's father. Isabel was under his protection. That truth lit the path, no matter how treacherous it grew. Dawn broke with a hazy sunrise filtering through the towering skyline. In the penthouse, the stillness of early morning felt like the suspended breath after a climactic storm. Alexander woke with a start from a fitful sleep, thrown across the sofa in his private study. He drifted off in his dress shirt and slacks, the events of the night still whirling in his mind. With a groan, he sat up, heart pounding as he recalled each moment. Rescuing Isabel, Lily's tearful relief, the confrontation in that desolate warehouse. He checked his phone, messages from police officials, from Natalie Cho, from Mara. One note from the hospital stood out. Isabel Carter resting, condition stable, awaiting visit. Reading it, he felt his chest lighten, if only a bit. She was safe. The kidnappers were in custody. Yet the puzzle was far from solved. A soft knock sounded at the study door. "Sir?" came Mara's gentle voice. When he answered, she stepped inside, holding her ever-present tablet. Her professional calm reflected that she too had processed last night's chaos. "Good morning," she said quietly. "How are you?" He ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "I've been better," he admitted, "but I'm ready for whatever comes next." She offered a small smile, acknowledging his resolve. Lily is awake. She ate a light breakfast, but she's anxious to see her mother. I've arranged a vehicle to take you both to the hospital whenever you're ready. He stood, shoulders sore from sleeping in an awkward position. Thank you. Let's go as soon as possible. 15 minutes later, father and daughter rode the private elevator down to the parking garage. Lily held his hand, steps quick with nervous energy. Though she looked tired, dark crescents under her eyes. Anticipation lit her face. Are we really going to see Mom? She asked, almost breathless. Alexander squeezed her hand gently. Yes, the doctors say she's stable enough for visitors. She nodded, biting her lip. I'm scared, she whispered, after a short silence. I want to see her so bad, but what if she's hurt worse than they said? What if... He knelt beside her, ignoring the swirl of staff passing in the garage. She's safe now, he said softly, brushing a lock of hair from Lily's forehead. I know it's scary, but the worst is behind us. We'll be right there with her. Lily took in a shaky breath and nodded. Okay. They climbed into a sleek, armored SUV with tinted windows. One of Alexander's lead security officers sat in the passenger seat. The driver pulled out smoothly, heading toward the hospital with an escort car behind them. It was a level of caution that once seemed excessive for mere personal matters, but after last night, Alexander wasn't taking any chances. The early traffic was moderate, sunlight glinting off tall office buildings. Lily stared out the window, quiet except for the subtle trembling of her fingers, which she locked together in her lap. Alexander gently covered her small hands with his own, lending reassurance. She glanced over with a grateful but strained half-smile. At last, they reached the private hospital's secure entrance. Staff recognized Alexander immediately, welcoming Lily with warm expressions. They navigated a quiet hallway until they reached Isabel's room. Outside stood two of Alexander's guards, who stepped aside to let them pass. Lily's breathing quickened. She fidgeted with the stuffed toy she insisted on bringing, its once smooth fur now worn with her anxious grip. Alexander eased the door open. The overhead lights were dimmed, the machines humming softly with monitors. Isabel lay propped against pillows, IV in her arm, her bruised face turned toward the window. When the door swung, she glanced over, and an immediate wave of emotion crossed her features. "Lily," she whispered, voice rasping with relief. "Mom!" Lily dashed forward, tears already spilling. She clutched the stuffed toy in one hand and reached for Isabel with the other, mindful of the IV line. Alexander stayed near the door, letting them have this moment. Isabel lifted her arm, drawing Lily close, her eyes flooded with tears. They stayed like that for a while, mother and daughter reuniting after fear, violence, and separation. Lily sobbed into Isabel's shoulder, words tumbling in fragments. "I was so worried. Dad helped me. I missed you." Isabel stroked her daughter's hair, tearful but smiling as though Lily's presence was the best possible medicine. Alexander approached slowly, standing at the foot of the bed. His chest felt tight with emotion he rarely allowed himself to show. "Isabel," he said softly, and she shifted her gaze toward him. Lily pulled back slightly, tears still on her cheeks, but a smile emerging. Isabel's hand trembled as she reached for Alexander's. He took it gently, noticing the bruises up her arm. "Thank you," she mouthed. Her voice, hoarse from the strain, made it hard to speak above a whisper. He shook his head. "I'm sorry it took so long," he replied, words low but fervent. "I know you tried to warn me years ago about something. Papers, corruption. I wish I'd known." Her eyes closed briefly. "We'll talk about it," she promised, inhaling carefully. "For now, I just need to see Lily safe." She looked at Lily, brushing a tear from the girl's cheek. "You did so well, sweetie. You found him, even though it was so scary. I'm proud of you." Lily's face beamed with watery joy. "I knew Dad would help," she said simply, leaning into Isabel's side. I just believed. Alexander blinked back, a stinging in his eyes. I owe you both. I want to make up for lost time, but also, we have to handle the issue of those documents. The people after you might try again if they think we're vulnerable. A flicker of fear crossed Isabel's features, but she nodded. The documents are hidden in a safe deposit box. I used a false identity to rent it. I can show you where, once I can move around. That evidence proves a ring of officials and executives laundered huge sums of money, siphoning from public programs. The men who grabbed me last night, they're just the foot soldiers, but the real orchestrators are powerful. Alexander exhaled. Then we exposed them. Now that we have the files, we can't keep them in the dark. The only safe path is going public, giving them to the authorities, the press, making it impossible for the criminals to hide. He glanced at Lily, voice softening. But your safety comes first. We can't do this halfway. Isabel's gaze darted between father and daughter. We can't run forever, she murmured. If we push the truth into the light, they'll have nowhere to strike from the shadows. A firm rap on the open door interrupted them. Natalie Cho stood there, accompanied by a detective from the local police. Apologies, Cho said quietly, but we have some developments. May we come in? Isabel nodded, adjusting her position. Lily scooted over to allow them space. Alexander recognized the detective as the same official who had begun investigating the kidnappers from last night. Cho spoke first. We've interrogated the suspects from the warehouse. They've confessed to being hired muscle for a group with major political ties. There's an official, an up-and-coming senator, plus a small circle of influential business figures who orchestrated the intimidation and kidnappings to bury corruption evidence. The detective cleared his throat. We want Ms. Carter to provide a formal statement and, if possible, turn over any relevant documents. With enough evidence, we can file indictments. But we need everything concrete. Isabel took a shaky breath, lifting her chin. I'll do it, she said, voice still fragile but resolute. I have the documents locked away. As soon as the doctors let me out, I can retrieve them. I'll testify too, if it keeps Lily safe. The detective nodded. Thank you, ma'am. We'll arrange protective measures and we'll coordinate with Mr. Pierce's security team for your safety. The DA's office will expedite everything once we see the evidence. Lily watched, eyes shining with anxious pride. Alexander slid an arm around her shoulders. We'll help, he promised, looking from Cho to the detective. Whatever resources you need. Cho offered a small smile, relieved. That might be everything we need to put a stop to this ring. I'll keep in touch. They left the room, quietly closing the door. The hush returned, broken by the soft beep of medical monitors. Isabel's expression flicked from exhaustion to a determined glint. I've dreamed of exposing them for years, she murmured, her hand shaking as she reached for Lily's. I was so tired of looking over my shoulder. Alexander angled closer, eyeing Lily's reaction. You won't have to anymore, he said. Once we deliver the evidence, the authorities will handle the rest. A soft ripple of relief crossed Isabel's face. Then Lily piped up, Will we live together after all this? Or do we go back to separate homes? The question stilled the air. Alexander felt a pang at how uncertain Lily must feel, tugged between mother and father who'd never shared a proper family life. He glanced at Isabel, noting her watery smile at Lily's hopeful tone. It depends on how your mom feels, Alexander said carefully. And you, Lily. We'll figure something out, someplace where you both feel safe. Isabel's gaze locked with his. In it, he saw 1,000 unspoken apologies, regrets, and perhaps a flicker of cautious optimism. She whispered, If it's okay. I'd like to stay near you at least until all the threats are gone. We can decide the future step by step. Alexander nodded, heart thrumming. That's more than okay, he said gently. Let's take it day by day. You'll heal, we'll protect Lily, and we'll handle the next wave of legal battles. Then we'll see what kind of life we can build, together, or however it works best for Lily. Tears slipped down Isabel's cheeks. Lily, pressed to her side, reached up to wipe them, hugging her mother's arm. A fragile, hopeful peace settled in that hospital room, each of them linked by a profound sense of survival and second chances. In the days that followed, the story unfolded like a slow cascade of revelations. Under the watchful eye of Alexander's security detail, Isabel was discharged from the hospital and moved to a private suite in Pierce Global Tower, where Lily stayed close, refusing to be more than a room away from her mother for a single moment. Meanwhile, Alexander's legal advisors, the police, and federal agents pored over the trove of damning documents. Headlines soon roared with exposés of the corrupt officials, high-flying businessmen, and their network of hidden accounts. Indictments rolled out in rapid sequence, fueled by interviews with Isabel and the undeniable evidence in those carefully encrypted files. For Lily, the transformation was sudden and startling. Gone were the days of constant running, of never unpacking in an apartment because they might have to flee overnight. Now she woke in the same bed, under the same skyline, with her mother recovering in a suite just down the hall, and her father stepping in each morning to ask about her dreams. Alexander adjusted too, discovering an odd serenity in domestic concerns, like sorting Lily's new clothes or helping her pick books from the penthouse library, amid the swirl of corporate duties and legal press conferences. The board of Pierce Global Holdings initially balked at the flurry of attention, but even they realized the powerful statement, Alexander Pierce, championing a cause of justice beyond profit margins. Public favor soared. Investors admired a family man image they had never before associated with him. And though Alexander rarely cared about PR spin, he admitted it was a relief that the media largely hailed Lily's story as an inspiring testament to paternal devotion, overshadowing any scandalous speculation. One afternoon, about a week after the warehouse rescue, Lily bounded into Alexander's office suite, shining with excitement. "Dad, the detectives just called me and Mom. They said the senator is arrested. The whole ring is going down." She practically danced in place. Alexander set aside his phone, letting a grin break across his face. "That's wonderful," he said warmly. "Come here." He guided her around his desk, pulling her into a one-armed hug. Lily beamed, glowing with the thrill of real justice. "They said they might still try to fight it in court," she added, nodding with mature understanding. "But with all those documents and witnesses, it's not likely." He gave her shoulder a reassuring squeeze. "Which means you and your mom can start living without fear." She exhaled, glancing around the spacious office with its sweeping city views. "It's so different, not having to pack every night," she admitted. "I actually unpacked my suitcase. I have clothes in a closet. It's weird, but good." Alexander's heart squeezed. "I want you to feel at home, Lily. I know everything's happened so fast, but this is your home for as long as you want it." She hugged him spontaneously, face lit with happiness that overshadowed her usual cautious expression. "Thank you, Dad. I love you," she said, words coming out in a rush, real and heartfelt. He inhaled sharply, returning her hug. He'd never known how a simple statement of love from one's child could unravel so many defenses, but it did, sending warmth through him. Shortly after, Isabel joined them, walking slowly, ribs still bandaged, but upright and determined. She smiled upon seeing Lily perched on the edge of Alexander's desk. "I figured I'd find you both here," she teased gently. Lily hopped down and raced to her mother's side, helping her if she needed support. But Isabel stood tall, eyes on Alexander. "The DA wants my official testimony next week. After that, hopefully, the worst is behind us." Alexander nodded, crossing the room. "I'll assign security to escort you. No more risks." She studied his face, gratitude evident. "You've done more than I ever thought," she said quietly. For Lily and for me. I can't pretend we're not strangers in many ways, but I'm grateful." He lifted a hand to her cheek with gentle care, mindful of the bruises fading there. "We have time to stop being strangers," he answered, voice husky. "For Lily's sake, and maybe for ours too, if that's what you want." Isabel's gaze lowered, lips curving. "I want that," she said, placing her hand over his. "We can figure it out together." A warm hush enveloped the office, father, mother, and daughter sharing a moment of tentative hope. Outside, the city hummed with the usual swirl of business and bustle, but within these walls, a new beginning quietly unfurled. Lily beamed, taking each of their hands, creating a small circle of 3. She said nothing, only smiled so brightly that tears pricked at Isabel's eyes, and Alexander felt his own chest tighten with something beyond gratitude, perhaps at last, real happiness. Days passed, the final pieces fell into place. Indictments turned into well-publicized trials. Journalists hounded for interviews, but Alexander kept Lily and Isabel shielded, choosing to let official statements do the talking. Pierce Global soared in reputation for having stood against corruption, though Alexander himself shrugged off any praise. For him, the victory was personal. Lily's mother could walk the streets without fear. Lily no longer had to dread shadows in every new apartment. One evening, Isabel was well enough to join Lily and Alexander for a private dinner in the penthouse. The table overlooked the glittering city. Candles flickered softly. Lily recounted the day's triumph, finishing her homework, exploring the building's garden terrace with a security guard who taught her a bit about plants. Isabel smiled, occasionally wincing at her healing ribs, but she managed to taste the dishes with growing appetite. Alexander watched them both, contentment seeping into him like a slow, welcome tide. Afterward, they strolled to the penthouse's wide balcony. The air was mild and Lily leaned over the railing in amazement, the city lights stretching far below like a star field. Isabel stood behind her, resting a hand on Lily's shoulder, while Alexander joined them, the breeze ruffling his collar. "It's beautiful up here," Isabel murmured, glancing sideways at Alexander. "I used to dream of seeing Lily this relaxed, looking at the sky, no fear." He reached for her hand, heart full. "She's safe now. You both are," he said. Then, stepping closer, he gazed out at the luminous horizon. "We might not have had the simplest start, but from here on, we shape our own story." Isabel's eyes shone, tears not of sorrow but of deep, resonant relief. Lily, overhearing, turned back with a bright grin. "Our own story," she echoed, hugging her mother with one arm and her father with the other. "Yes, together." In that moment, the city's roar faded, overshadowed by the silent bond of a family that had fought their way through shadows to find each other. Alexander breathed in, letting the comfort of unity settle into his core. He might have built an empire in glass and steel, but here, surrounded by the two people who mattered most, he felt the surest foundation of all. They stood that way a long time, letting the wind carry the fragments of their past fears away. Below them, life went on, full of complexities and challenges. But up here, in the hush of the penthouse balcony, Lily's soft laughter, Isabel's trembling smile, and Alexander's quiet determination converged. Together they had claimed something stronger than any conspiracy or corruption. A family, imperfect, resilient, bound by love and second chances. If you enjoyed this story, don't miss the next one. Just click on the screen.